So, I'm 36 weeks pregnant with my first child, a baby boy. My mother-in-law, Magda, has fixated on us naming our child Patrick because I'm due in March. More than anything in the world, she wants us to name baby Patrick Liam to honor her family's Irish heritage. At the beginning of my third trimester, I could not take her constant badgering, so I blocked her number. I told dear husband all contact with her has to go through him. Dear husband and I are both practicing Catholics. Both sides of our family have a tradition of naming children after saints. I have a saint name, dear husband and all of his siblings have saint names. My stepchildren have saint names, and Magda has a saint name. We're naming the baby Toribio Romo. Santa Toribio is a saint who was a parish priest in Mexico, in the town next to where my family's from. All the first sons in my family are given this name. It's a tradition I'm happy to continue. I'm at brother-in-law one's house for this Super Bowl party. My wide, pregnant butt is comfortably sitting in the recliner with my feet up. I'm feeling good, my feet are up. The kids are bringing me snacks and beverages, and Magda and brother-in-law's mother-in-law, Linda, are talking to me about babies and child rearing. Magda is on her best behavior in front of Linda. Linda's the treasurer of our church and also runs the women's Bible study group. So she hasn't harped on naming the baby Patrick Liam. The conversation stays cheerful and lights up until Linda asks if we decided on a name. Magda's eyes open wide and I coolly say, "Oh, we're naming him after Santo Toribio." Before Linda can say anything, Magda starts ugly crying. Magda says Toribio is an unacceptable name. It's hard to pronounce and his classmates will make fun of him for it. She thinks naming our children after the patron saint of immigrants is disgusting. Magda fell to the floor screaming that I've stolen her youngest son and am forcing him to turn his back on his Irish heritage. The only reason I'm with him was to get a green card and to escape my desperately poor life. She wishes dear husband's late wife was still here because she was nicer, aka she was a doormat, and would never dream of giving an innocent child such a disgusting name. My stepchildren deserve a better stepmother because I'm just a gold digger who's only concerned with money. Linda just looked at her in gaped-mouth horror. I just got up and walked out of the house, determined to not cry in front of Magda. I did not want to give her the satisfaction of knowing she hurt me. Magda is in denial that I'm not only a U.S. citizen, I'm U.S. born to U.S. born parents. She hates that my stepchildren adore me and like my parents more than her. I have some more stories about her because typing this out's exhausting. Thank you, Just No Mother-in-Law, for letting me vent. I have no idea what to do with her now. What's up, guys? Mr. Reddito here. I have 9 complete updates for this insane roller coaster of a ride story. If you think you've seen the worst of Magda, you've seen nothing yet. I hope you're subscribed to the channel. If you don't know, there's 3 Mr. Reddito channels that upload daily videos. Please support me and subscribe to all 3. You can find them in the description below with links directly to the channels. I hope you guys are having a great day. Let's see what Magda's up to. Here's update number 2. My horrendous mother-in-law, Magda, had a racist meltdown directed at me, a Mexican-American, at her oldest son's Super Bowl party. Luckily, my brother-in-law's mother-in-law, Linda, was there to witness the full splendor of Magda's hurtful words. Unfortunately, the rest of the family has been working hard to sweep everything under the rug and paint me as the bad guy. In my last post, I forgot to mention that I've known Linda since I was a kid. She was my teacher at school, and I never had her, but my older sister and a bunch of my cousins were in her class. Magda has the story in her mind that I'm living in the US with a stolen security number, have a desperately poor family, and I'm only with dear husband for money and US citizenship. In her mind, my dedication to parenting my stepchildren is to brainwash them to love me, so dear husband can't leave me. As a graphic designer / illustrator, I work half at the office, half at home. Mother-in-law thinks I work in a service job because of my, quote, untraditional hours. If it wasn't for me, her family would be happy and peaceful. You know, standard crazy mother-in-law stuff. Dear husband's wife, Jana, died in a car accident when the youngest was 6 months old. Shortly afterward, dear husband took a job across the country where he met me. That's how I met him. It's the annual company barbecue. Her family are a bunch of narcissistic a-holes, and Jana was totally the SG. When she died, her family just ghosted. And the entire time I've been with dear husband, Jana's family has never contacted the children. No phone calls, no visits, no cards, nothing. That's fine with me because my family was overjoyed to add dear husband and the kids to the family. The kids' school pictures are on my parents' living room wall right along with all the other grandchildren. I've been with dear husband since the kids were 2, 4, and 6. They're now youngest 12, middle 14, and oldest 16. And I'm pregnant with my first baby due in 3 weeks. Magda loathes with every fiber of her being that my family loves the kids so much. It fills her with jealous rage that they prefer going to my parents' tiny house in the hood rather than her sterile tract mansion in a bland subdivision. It gets under her skin that I taught the children to speak Spanish, and they go to bilingual school. When she comes over to the house and the Spanish language TV or radio's on, she turns it off and makes an exaggerated sigh of relief. Magda lost her mind when MD plucked her eyebrows thin with a high arc, copied from the photos of me in high school from the 90s. MD is rocking the East LA style like her cousins. Brown lipstick, huge hoop earrings, black Chuck Taylors, big hair, I love it. This wasn't a day-to-day problem before we moved back to Southern California. Before, we lived across the country in Florida. We've been back about 2 years now, and I'm ducking done. The day after the party, oldest son went to my sister's house to hang out with his cousins. He told them what happened, and they got all riled up. The Latino mechanism. Meanwhile, Magda had been text bombing older son, pleading with him not to be upset. Magda can't be herself in talking crap about me, enraging older son further. She offered to give older son's father-in-law's old Lexus that he did not sell when he bought his new car. Older son told her to go duck herself. Dear husband and I have been arguing throughout this pregnancy because Magda would not give me any space. As soon as we announced I was pregnant, she texted me multiple times a day, asking for updates. Magda was already annoyed that I refused to let her have a co-parenting relationship with the kids when she moved back to Southern California. I suspected that's why dear husband moved across the country when Jana died. She wanted to go to all of my prenatal appointments and ultrasounds like she did for all of her grandchildren. Magda was also displeased that I wasn't going to let her pick out the baby's name, like she did for all of her other grandchildren. I finally blocked her number and told DH that all communication from her had to go through him. Magda wants the baby's name to be Patrick Liam, as he's due in March. We're having to name the baby Toribio Romo, because it has a significant sentimental meaning in my family. Dear husband and I had an argument about maybe using the middle name of Liam. I refused because Magda will end up calling him Liam and the rest of dear husband's side will follow suit. Magda called dear husband at work and cried about only son telling her to duck herself. Dear husband let Magda cry on the phone for about 30 minutes, upset at the way we let the children disrespect their elders. None of this would happen if I just followed the family tradition of Magda being the third spouse in her children's marriage. My wordings. Older son, already riled up from his cousins, overheard that argument on Tuesday and exploded the next night on Wednesday. Magda will not stop text bombing all the children. Older son and dear husband start arguing in the backyard. Older son tells dear husband he's a failure as a man, a father, and a husband for allowing Magda to act like this. I stayed out of it because I found myself agreeing with older son way too much. Older son loves my parents more because they love him as a person. Magda just treats him as a lifestyle accessory. As soon as he's 18, he'll never speak to her again because she's just blood related. By my side loves him like family, should always love someone. Older son also said that if dear husband and I got divorced, him and his siblings would want to live with me because he'll just crawl up Magda's booty, begging her to love him. He said that he wishes that we never moved back to Southern California. He liked it better when Magda only visits once a year and stayed in a hotel. Dear husband ended the argument by telling older son to go to his room. When I heard older son's bedroom door slam and dear husband stomping into the back room to watch TV, I took MD, aka middle daughter, and younger son to get burgers. At an In-N-Out, they filled me in on Magda's constant texting. They have not responded back because they're afraid of causing more drama. My heart's breaking. I felt guilty for standing my ground because it's hurting the kids with the tension. Then they start talking about all the times Magda has been mean to me, and I was nice back. I had to reassure them that dear husband and I aren't talking about divorce, because Magda told them dear husband and I are going to break up a family, and we'll abandon them, like Jana's family did. She wants to reconcile because soon she'll be the only grandmother they have. She has a forgiving heart, and she still loves them. I try to play it cool even though I'm seeing red. I'm an adult with kids, a successful corporate career, and a late model minivan, but I'm still from the barrio. The East LA Chola in me wants to fill a sock full of pennies and use it to beat her surgically enhanced face in. I purposely keep the conversation in English at the In-N-Out so I can make sure I choose my words more carefully. It's getting late, so we go home. The kids go to their bedrooms. Dear husband tries to get me to sympathize with him over this argument of him and older son. I'm most definitely not sympathetic. I tell him that the way younger kid told me, oldest son most definitely did not mention that part to dear husband, and dear husband gets angry again. I told him I'm not interested in anything he has to say because he hasn't handled his mother. I told him he needs to sleep in the TV room. I would go, but seeing pregnant with his son requires me to have a bed with better lumbar support. Dear husband stomps out of the room and slams the door. Older son texts me to tell me he's sorry for causing the fight between me and dear husband. Me and dear husband don't speak from yesterday morning. Even though he's angry with his mom, he's also mad at me for not backing him up during the fight with older son. Middle daughter went through her clothes and gave everything that Magda gave to her to Goodwill. Younger son is spending extra time practicing the piano. I know he's upset because he's only playing songs in minor key. So, we go to Sunday Mass and Magda isn't there. I don't take my cell phone, and I don't allow the kids to take their phones to church either, after I caught middle daughter scrolling through Instagram during a mass a few months back. When I get home, I saw a voicemail from father-in-law. I listened to it, and father-in-law went on for 3 minutes about how I need to resolve this conflict with Magda because it's my fault, and Magda feels uncomfortable at church because I made her out to be a monster to the other parishioners. Traditions are important in their family, and I was inconsiderate for even discussing the choice of names with her. He also said that they still love me, even though there are many huge cultural differences between us. Also, is older son sure he doesn't want his old Alexis? It was dear husband's turn to help clean the chapel after service. When he got home from church, I had him listen to the voicemail. Afterwards, he apologized for me and asked me to go to couples counseling. Linda told our priest about what Magda said at the Super Bowl party. Instead of cleaning the chapel after Mass, the priest and dear husband had a long talk. Older son had disowned Magda and father-in-law. He wrote them a no-contact letter and blocked their numbers from his phone, blocked them on Facebook, and set his email to automatically delete emails from them. I'm sad it's come to this, but impressed that only son has the fortitude at year 16 to cut toxic people out of his life. The kids aren't just stepchildren to me, they're my everything. I've made many personal and professional sacrifices to make sure they have the best childhood possible. I'm getting a little teary-eyed right now because I hate that Magda has spewed out such disgusting, vile bullcrap trying to make them hate me. It hurts me deeply that she can't just be happy with her son and who her son's marrying a good woman who loves his children unconditionally. There we go. I'm sure after my baby boy is born, there'll be a fresh uptick in Magda's shenanigans. Dear husband has not gone non-contact with her yet, so I know the fighting will continue. I'm grateful that my brother's wife is coming to stay with us for 6 weeks after the baby's born. I need someone else to be there so I don't cave to Magda in my vulnerable postpartum time. Last night, I dreamt that I cut Magda's tongue out with a kitchen knife, and I ate it in tacos a la lunga. I woke up a little sad that it did not actually happen. Update number 2. When Magda convinced her granddaughter she was obese. My middle kid is doing the purge. She's getting rid of everything that Magda's given her. The bag of stuff in the hall today has reminded me of why I don't allow her unsupervised time with the kids. When we moved to Southern California from Florida, Magda assumed that things would go like they did with her other grandchildren. Dear husband is the bumper baby, 8 years apart from his older brother. The rest of his nieces and nephews are adults who have all moved away. Magda was so excited to spend their time with her younger grandchildren. She offered to take them to school in the morning, 4 days a week, and drive middle daughter to her soccer practice, and take her home after the 3 days a week. It was too good to be true. She was never late, but cut it way too close for my liking in the mornings. She would insist on picking up middle daughter in the afternoon in her tiny roadster, the trunk too small to fit her huge duffel bag, so she would have to put it in her lap, blocking her from seeing out of the car. This really made me mad because she had no problem picking them up in the mornings with her S500 sedan. Right at the end of the first school year in Cali, middle daughter started dramatically restricting her food intake. She thought she was clever by taking small portions and chewing very slowly. She started working out harder, knocking out another hour on the stationary bike after practice. She was so cranky all the time. I was wondering what her friends were pushing her into, and she admittedly denied it. We were on week 3 of 5 of dear husband being in South America on a business trip. Middle daughter comes inside looking like she just finished crying. Magda follows her looking like the cat who ate the canary. I'm busy getting dinner together while making sure younger son's doing his homework at the kitchen table. Magda comes over to my stove and toots what I'm making, telling me middle daughter might be depressed in high school if she stayed stocky. Just because I'm Mexican doesn't mean the kid should eat beans fried in lard daily. She understands that food's cheap in the US, but I should not fall in the trap of eating rich food every day because it's available. So I asked her to leave. Her ears just tear up and she fake apologizes. She just wants to make sure her grandchildren are happy and healthy. If cooking is too much of a burden, she should be more than happy to pay for a service to deliver our meals. Daily, if we need. Older son and younger son got really excited. I was tired from working full-time and having the kids on my own. The idea of daily meal services while dear husband was gone didn't sound so bad. Joke's on me, because that food was terrible and Magda made sure to tell everybody how lazy I am when dear husband's gone. So, hearing my frustration with middle daughter, my brother offers to take her with him when he visits his in-laws in Mexico. My sister-in-law's families are hardcore soccer fan, and she has quite a few nieces middle daughter's age. She was gone for 3 days when my brother calls me. Middle daughter has been food restricting overworking, and because Magda is the one who told her that she needs to have muscle definition and a flat stomach to be successful in Southern California. Middle daughter is obese, and if she doesn't get it together, she'll be a social pariah. She also offered to pay for the breast implants as a high school graduation gift on the condition she gets and stays fit. I told dear husband and he called Magda. She at first denied saying those things before eventually admitting to it. She's only looking out for middle daughter's best interests because she'll be as large as a dumpster if they keep eating my cooking. Besides, we should have been proud of middle daughter's dedication. She works hard and looks fantastic. She non-apologized and dear husband ate it up. After we got off the phone, he seemed proud of how he handled the situation. Middle daughter did not look fantastic. She was thin, pale, irritable, and she was losing a lot of hair. We fought daily over trivial stuff, and my funny and easygoing girl became a nightmare. I was exhausted, so I just let it slide. When middle daughter came back, she gained a little weight and had her color back. We went out clothes shopping for school when middle daughter said she did not want to play soccer anymore. I had to really pry it out of her that she wanted to quit, so Magda doesn't drive her to practice anymore. The entire time in the car, she pinned to her seat from the back, and Magda's interrogating her about what she ate and how she's working out. Some of Magda's friends volunteer with the club. Magda wanted to make absolutely sure that middle daughter made her look the world's best grandparent. I wanted dear husband to tell her that her chauffeur service was no longer needed. He tried to just mess around with it, angering Magda, and they had a huge fight, ending with Magda no longer wanting to take the children to school. Awesome. I felt so good a few days later when Magda asked for the school schedule. I told her not to worry about it. Again, she made sure to tell everyone how I'm actively alienating her grandchildren from her. I never told anyone that she wasn't allowed to have unsupervised time with the kids. I just maneuvered it so it did not happen. I still feel guilty about letting middle daughter's brief brush with the compulsive overexercising happen. Post update number 3, Magda threw a lawn tantrum. Today, I was taking a pregnancy-induced coma nap in the living room when I woke up to my nephew, Lewis, he's our landscaper, arguing with someone in the front yard. I peek out the front window and he's arguing with 2 men in front of a truck from a very expensive furniture store near my a-hole mother-in-law Magda's house. They stop arguing when I open the front door. Lewis instantly apologizes for waking me up from my nap. He explains that this store is trying to deliver a bunch of furniture, a new piano, and it's all paid for. When he saw Magda's name on the receipt, he knew I would not want it. The delivery guys just could not understand how I could refuse a complete nursery set made of teak and a brand new Yamaha piano. I ended up calling the store, telling the manager if they did not leave, I was going to call the cops. Refund Magda's money or don't. I don't give a crap. This furniture was not coming off the truck into my home. So the delivery guys and Magda's furniture leave and Lewis goes back to working on the flower beds. Huh, I knew it wasn't over. When I hung up with the manager of the store, I knew Magda was going to be at my house in 55 minutes. 25 minutes to get the phone call and summon her flying monkeys. 30 minutes to drive to my house with said flying monkeys. Right on schedule, Magda, sister-in-law 2, and her daughter-in-law came roaring up our street in Magda's car. Magda's in front seat with sister-in-law's daughter-in-law driving, her mascara streaking down her face and enraging me further. Her streaked-up makeup was for show, her eyes weren't puffy, and her favorite mascara's waterproof. Before she could bang on my door, I threw it open and told him to leave. She stops in the middle of the walk and just chastises me for refusing to be part of the family. Why did I insist of having to do things different and have such blatant disregard for the last name family traditions? She just wants to love me and she loves her grandson. With him still being born in the US, I'll have an easier path to citizenship. She's sorry for threatening to get me deported. She wants to resolve our conflicts before the baby's born. And then, bam! My nephew hits her with the garden hose. He makes sure to absolutely soak her. He's yelling at her to leave before he calls the cops, and he follows her to the car, hose on full blast. Quite a bit of water gets into her stupid fancy car before she can get in and close the door. They take off quickly before they're even to the freeway. Magda calls me using granddaughter-in-law's cell phone. She's screaming into the phone, and she told me that she still loves me and I need to get over it. Dear husband and I have been married for long enough for me to know that she's the head of the family. I need to know my place. I told her that she'll never meet her grandson. She's not allowed to come to the hospital. She is not invited to his christening. We will never come to holidays in her home. Dear husband's free to have whatever relationship he wants with her, but now the two older children, me, and the still fetus in my stomach don't have a relationship. The youngest can decide, but trying to buy his affection with a new piano is offensive. I'll not be encouraging him to spend time with her. I hang up. Dear husband and the kids have said nothing about her when they get home. I don't know what's going to happen now. There, Magda Elephants is in the room, and even saying her name out loud enrages me. Next update, 4 days later, Magda visits her adult grandchildren. Last time on My Mother-in-Law's a Psycho A-Hole, she tried to buy my youngest son a new piano and my unborn baby a suite of unnecessarily expensive nursery furniture. I refused delivery and she came over to yell. My nephew turned on the garden hose and she wouldn't leave. He got a lot of water inside of her car, but she left. I suspect my father-in-law did not know that she just dropped that kind of money, which he did not. This brings us to yesterday. My brother-in-law too, husband and father-in-law to the flying monkeys Magda brought her with to yell at me, leaves a panicked text message for dear husband to call him ASAP. Dear husband's still mad that brother-in-law two's wife and daughter-in-law joined Magda to try to bully me into submitting to her will. He doesn't return the text or call. After getting flurry of panicked texts from all of his brothers and cousins, dear husband finally calls father-in-law. American Express called father-in-law. The furniture store refused to refund Magda after I refused delivery. She tried to get it charged back, claiming fraud, and the furniture store called the house number instead of Magda's cell phone. Father-in-law picks up the phone and the owner told father-in-law he can go duck himself. They're banned from the store because of Magda's behavior. Okay, cue the blowout fight between them. Magda leaves in a dramatic fashion. She doesn't come or call Friday night, and by Saturday afternoon, he logs into the mobile bank to see Magda made a sizable cash withdrawal in a branch near an out-of-way airport. She took a plane somewhere, but father-in-law can't tell where, and United put him on hold for 45 minutes before he gave up. So, dear husband recounts this to me while I'm playing video games with younger son, and I'm pretty much ignoring it, because this is just more escalation of her bullcrap. It wasn't until he said this. Let it slip that mom redesigned her medication regimen, when I actually paid attention. Awesome. An improperly medicated psycho running around with major financial strains. Awesome. Yesterday morning, brother-in-law 3's daughter Tammy, Magda's #1 scapegoat, calls her parents upset because Magda showed up at her door disheveled and wearing sweatpants, crying hysterically about needing to reunite her family. Magda lives in Southern California, Tammy, Virginia, and not close to a major airport. Magda's in Tammy's house, terrifying her great-grandchildren that she's never met before, just carrying on. Honestly, I can't believe Tammy let her in, considering they've been on a no contact for at least 5 years. Tammy agrees to let Magda stay there until father-in-law gets there. He'll book the next flight out, and Magda flips out when she hears his plan and leaves. Tammy tells father-in-law she doesn't give enough of a duck to chase after her. Magda does the same to brother-in-law 2's daughter, Bambi, who lives in New Jersey. Granddaughter comes from work to Magda crying again hysterically about wanting to reunite the family. The building manager let her in the apartment, believe it or not. Bambi and Magda have been estranged for a long time. Bambi was at least expecting something because Tammy texted all of her cousins warning them. She kept it cool, gave Magda a crap load of special pills and a glass of wine. She was passed out long enough to be collected by father-in-law. So this isn't the first time Magda's gone off her medicine, had a ragey meltdown at someone else that she did not like in the first place, and then goes on spending sprees. This is the 3rd time she's done it. The first 2 times were when we were living in Florida, so the family decided to just not tell dear husband. This sounds so ducking ridiculous, I know. When I vented about this to my mom, she just threw up her hands. She feels sorry for my white people problems. Yes, this is the total no contact time. I told dear husband and father-in-law also need to be cut off. He's enabled this behavior for far too long. I'm thinking also about changing hospitals to have the baby. I'm just paranoid that dear husband's family is not going to properly deal with Magda. Just bring her back to Southern California. I'm so mad at her mental health crisis. I'd feel less guilty if she was just her regular a-hole self. Next post, 4 days later, Magda's intervention. After Magda's epic freakout and impromptu visit to the East Coast to harass and stalk her no-contact granddaughters, she's returned to Southern California. All total, she's visited 3 of her 5 granddaughters, Tammy, Bambi, and Renee. All have been no contact with her for at least 5 years. When father-in-law collected Magda from Bambi's, she escaped the hotel and drove from South New Jersey to upstate New York to Renee's house. Renee especially hates Magda because Magda stopped paying her college tuition when she would not break up with her Jewish boyfriend, now husband. She converted, they got married, she finished college and moved upstate. Their wedding was the best family event with dear husband's family I'd ever gone to. Because his parents weren't there, this is where I got hip to raise Kugel. Google his stuff and get into it. Magda shows up at Renee's house, pounding on the door, screaming about family unity. Renee's mother-in-law calls the cops, and Magda gets arrested. Father-in-law finally catches up with her, and they take the next flight back to LA from Buffalo. Brother-in-law 1 puts together an intervention at his house. His marriage is on the rocks right now because this is not Magda's first mental health meltdown that he's had to deal with. His mother-in-law, Linda, witnessed Magda's racist freakout at me at their Super Bowl party. Linda has known my family for a long time. She taught at the school we went to. Linda has been talking in her daughter's ear about how she should divorce brother-in-law 1. He is desperate to give his mom reined in. Dear husband refused to go to the intervention. His brothers begged him, and he completely refused. He says Magda is dead to him, and dead people can't have interventions. I'm proud of him for that. When they came back on Wednesday night, Bambi calls me to let me know that they're going to have an intervention. Father-in-law and dear husband's brother thinks the girls are coming for support. Renee and Tammy's brother, who's in the Navy on a boat somewhere, will be Skyping in. Well, they had the meeting this morning. Bambi is a mastermind. She had father-in-law, dear husband's brother, the GC grandson, and his wife say supportive, loving things about how they want her to get help for her mental issues and RX addiction. When it was the girls' turn to talk, each of them gave Magda CD letters and said a variation of, "I'll come to your funeral to make sure you're dead." Father-in-law was mad because he paid for airfare, rental cars, and hotels for everyone. An argument ensued about how ungrateful everyone is. Then father-in-law scolded his sons for raising such jerks for daughters. Magda had another tantrum, screaming about how nobody loves her and she's made so many sacrifices for her family. She should just get rid of herself. Blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, Magda agreed to do the 90-day rehab program. The website makes it look way more like a spa than a rehab. I'm sure she'll love the daily individual and group therapy sessions, massages, and horseback riding on the beach. On the plus side, my baby shower's tomorrow and dear husband's nieces are in town, so they get to come. Our lawyer friend sent a sternly worded letter with Magda's photos to the hospital I'm having the baby at. My OB got me in touch with the hospital's risk management department. I'm registered privately with a flag on my chart to not only admit dear husband and my older brother's wife, who is like my second mom. My stepkids are staying with my parents while I'm in the hospital. I feel a lot better, whole lot better now that I know Magda is being fawned over in rehab. Next update, 15 days later. Thankfully, I'm on baby high still, so I'm not as upset as it could be. I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy yesterday, 3/17/16, just after midnight. I had an easy short labor with a perfectly healthy baby. I was in the hospital for about 12 hours. This was a nice, easy end to an emotionally difficult pregnancy. I'm glad after everything my nutso mother-in-law put me through, at least birthing my baby boy was a breeze. My brother-in-law's mother-in-law, Linda, just called me asking why Magda announced the birth of my baby on Facebook with photos and sent me screenshots. My youngest big kid texted those pictures to her along with the vitals. Magda wrote a pitiful paragraph about how she's sad and that her grandson's birth is tainted by the animosity from me. It's like it never ends. I was foolish to think she would actually stay in rehab through the birth of her grandbaby. I'm so thankful for my sister-in-law, my oldest bro's wife, and my second mom being here, so at least I know Magda won't get into my home. But duck, man, I don't know what to do with the boy. I can't even look at him right now because I feel so violated. I hate Magda because she's the master manipulator and knows exactly how to get under the kid's skin. On the other hand, he was told directly by me and his father that he is not to communicate with her. I was beating him with a sock full of pennies would make me feel better and remedy the situation. Next update, 1 month later. My mother-in-law's a psycho a-hole and a little jerk, if you can fill that in. It's been quiet after the Facebook fiasco. My sister-in-law Sylvia is taking care of me, cooking, cleaning, handling the big kids. I've been lounging around the house with the baby, getting breastfeeding. 2 weeks after the baby was born, dear husband had to go to Asia for a work thing. This has been planned for the last 2 years. It was expected and unavoidable. April 20th, well, that's a hard day for me. I was in a pretty bad car accident while pregnant with my boyfriend Victor. He died and I lost the baby. Holding baby Mo, the exact copy of dear husband, is a little bittersweet. Victor was my first everything. We were about to get married. I was absolutely devastating, and I still managed to graduate college with a double major and good grades. In our living room, dear husband and I have a little shrine for our departed loved ones. The first time Magda saw the shrine, she got really weird for the rest of her trip to visit us. She's always wanted to just come visit us in April under the guise of Easter, and I let her. Without fail, she would say something snarky when I would be glum this time of year. How could I be sad when I had this beautiful family? Why aren't I happy with the big kids? During the month of April, I light candles and say a prayer for Victor and my lost daughter. One year, I caught Magda blowing out the candles. I don't know why I didn't call her out, I just relit them. Last year, she told me it's inappropriate to light candles for him because we're not married, and it was a long time ago. But she also has no problem lighting candles for dear husband's departed wife. Today, Magda sends me a large angel-themed flower arrangement. I was going to post a picture, but my oldest stepson might see this here and asked me not to. It's very large, like something you would see in a funeral. I was by myself. Sylvia took the big kids to school and was running errands. The attention to detail's stunning, and Magda knows exactly where to go and make it hurt. I didn't let the delivery guy bring it inside. After he left, I put Mo in the swing. Then Ugly cried next to the beautiful flowers. I grieve for the family I wish dear husband could have had. Since Magda's meltdown during the Super Bowl, there's a sadness in his eyes when we're with my side of the family. He grew up cared for by a yearly changing nanny and housekeeper. It hurts him to know that he was only a lifestyle accessory. I love dear husband, but sometimes I miss Victor so much it hurts. I still hurt for my oldest lost daughter. I was with him for 6 years, you know. Our families are still close friends, and that life was stolen from me by the drunk asshole who crashed into us and did not leave without a scratch. When I was done crying at the flowers, a wave of dark, cold, aching sadness hit me. This was different from the bitter tears of exhausted frustration. Seeing those flowers made me remember 1,000 memories of Victor all at once. Then I think about crying so hard in my hospital bed, with nothing but stitches. I cuddle my tiny baby, thankfully he's healthy and alive. I hate her so much. I've always been kind, polite, and compromising with her. She used it against me. I put up with Magda's bullcrap for so long. When I put my foot down, she tries to alienate my youngest big kid from me and taunts me about my departed partner and lost daughter. I try not to really think about it, but I imagine myself dancing in a red dress over her grave. Oh boy, I could really use a blunt the size of my infant's arm. But I'm breastfeeding. The idea of pump and dump makes me feel really sad I bring myself to do it. I ducking hate 420 so much. OMG, I wish the stoner holiday wasn't tainted by this. Final update of part 1. So yeah, bad news, or rather sad news. Father-in-law died on Monday. He had a heart attack in the shower, likely dead before he hit the floor. My sister-in-law, Linda, called me to inform me of the news. The call was mostly a warning of the memorial service and funeral plans Magda had. Magda's holding court in her house, enjoying being the grieving widow, while her daughter-in-laws flutter around the house entertaining guests. Father-in-law was a very successful businessman in his industry. Many people in the industry will be there, networking their butts off. Getting invited to his memorial service is a major professional coup. Magda is very aware of this, and let me tell ya, she's loving it. I checked my Magda folder, and sure enough, was the summons to the memorial service and funeral with instructions on appropriate dress. It's ducking laughable, and I'm leaning towards not going at all. Dear husband's in Asia for another 6 weeks. A little bit of a tidbit. The boys, including the baby, are to wear black suits, white shirts, black ties. The older boys are to tie their ties in a half Windsor knot, father-in-law's favorite. It is acceptable to the baby to have a clip-on tie. Daughter and I have to wear black dresses. The neckline should be high, shoulders and elbows covered, of course. The hem of our dresses should be no shorter than 1 inch above our knees. No bare legs and no flat shoes. Our hair and makeup will need to be professionally done. It'll go to her regular salon and they'll bill her for the services. Dear husband needs to come back from Asia for the funeral. He won't answer her phone calls, so it's up to me to convince him. He needs to be here for this difficult time for the family. If he absolutely cannot leave, Skyping will marginally be acceptable. And finally, there will be professional photographers documenting the memorial service, funeral, mass, and burial. It is vitally important we are photo ready at all times. Some of these photos will be published in the major trade publications of father-in-law's industry. Y'all, I wish I had more eyes to roll. From what my sister-in-law told me, Magda's meltdown at me really did father-in-law in. After the intervention, he really started going downhill. Dear husband and I have not talked about his father dying. I figured when he's ready to talk to me about it, he'll talk. Right now, he's on a career-defining business trip. The last thing I want to talk to him about when he has a Skype date is his father's death. When I told the older kids that father-in-law died, my middle kid rolled her eyes and said, "Why couldn't the Lord just take her instead?" They've decided that they won't go. Wise women of just no mother-in-law, what should I do? Tell me about your experiences. I love you so much. And one final small update to add before the end of part 1. I had a long conversation with dear husband last night. I made him talk about the logistics of his father's death. He's not coming home from Asia. Quote, "I'm missing my son's first months of life for this project. I can easily miss father-in-law's funeral. If he comes back early, he'll have to go back." He also forwarded me several emails Magda sent him bad-mouthing me. Dear husband's Aunt Carol, father-in-law's younger sister, wants me to sit down at the mass and burial with her. Her husband passed away a few years ago and her kids weren't able to fly from Florida for the funeral. We're very close and I'm honored that she wants me there. Magda and Carol had a major falling out in the 90s. Carol's the bigger person, so Magda steers clear. Carol assures me that at no point will Magda come near any of us. Father-in-law's brother's children and grandchildren are attending. They'll make sure we're surrounded. I'm not attending the public service. I have a couple of dark-colored pantsuits I can get in with some Spanx and a prayer. I'm not at all catapulting to Magda's dress code. Yeah, right. My attire at these events will lean heavily towards funeral attire. My youngest big kid is taking this better than I expected. He's still without a computer and phone privileges after sending Magda photos of the baby. He's working in my uncle's recording studio after school to keep him busy. It's really improving his musical abilities. The reading of father-in-law's wills today at 12. I'm on high alert for Magda to come over afterwards crying about her family and wanting to see the baby. Lewis is working on my yard this afternoon and Magda could get water hosed again. Make sure you subscribe to the channel because part 2 of this story, yeah, that's right, this is a 3-part saga, is coming out tomorrow. Hey guys, I've been reading quite a lot of posts lately and interacting with them. I never thought I'd be one to write one though. A lot of them are about crappy in-laws and I relate to them so much. My mother-in-law tops all of them for being the worst kind of human anyone could ever be, so I too want to narrate the chronicles of a malicious mother-in-law. For those who don't know, let me just say on behalf of the group of women whose mother-in-law has tortured them, for some mothers, watching their son get married brings out a completely different person. They think that their son is a freaking god who deserves nothing less than a goddess, who will serve them like a slave. These mothers of husbands are the biggest flag bearers of patriarchy and are a bane to society. Let me tell you myself, just a bit about it. I'm Jane, 35 female, and I'm an entrepreneur who's based in a quaint little town where I was raised. I have my own chain of beauty products and hope to blow up nationwide pretty soon. I've changed everyone else's name to protect my privacy, and I live with my husband Tim. And you can say I live with my mother-in-law, Linda, because she's over at our house pretty much all the time. Tim is part of the management team in a huge industry, and I won't go into what he does, but he does well for himself. He went to an Ivy League school too, and I met him at a conference for young business leaders. He was one of the panels and guest speakers, and we got to talking, and I asked him a question. When he trailed away from the conversation and got to talking, it was all sparks flying. We got along so well. We started going out, going on dates and everything, and around 2 years later, we decided to get married. I took him home to my parents and they loved him. I can't say I made the same impression on his parents, and the moment I entered his parents' house, Linda was being so snarky. I was scrutinized the entire time I was there, and she started complaining about us not asking for her permission before deciding to get married. She blamed it all on me, even though it was a joint decision, you know. Tim apologized for not including her in the decision, and I was flabbergasted at the whole family's dynamic. Tim's father, Larry, had no say in anything. He just agreed with whatever Linda had to say. Linda blurted out that I was marrying Tim for money. She said that she could see it right on my face. I explained that I do pretty well for myself too, thank you, and that one day my business will do wonders. She scrunched up her face when I spoke to her and did not acknowledge what I even said. Her manner of dealing with me made me actually pretty mad, and it turned out to be the worst first meeting with the parents. Tim's parents wanted us to sign a prenup. Tim said that it was not necessary, but he was being a pushover, so he agreed to do the prenup. After we left, I asked him for an explanation of their unusual behavior, and he got defensive about it. I did not see the red flags. I should have started setting boundaries, but I did not, and it's now turning my life into a living hell. Linda is a total control freak, and wanted my wedding to be her way. I tried so hard so that she would not have her way, but she's obnoxious and won't listen to anyone. Tim could see what was happening, but could not say anything about it. He let everything happen the way his mother wanted it, to avoid conflict. He expected me to follow her ways to maintain the peace, and she kept crossing her limits throughout the wedding.
She even gossiped about me not being a virgin and having sex with multiple men before Tim.
She came wearing an extravagant black gown, which made her stand out a bit. She even put shellfish on our dinner menu when I had specifically asked her not to because my father is deathly allergic. My poor father could not eat anything throughout the whole wedding. We did not know what was contaminated and what wasn't. I mean, it was awful. She kept cracking jokes about our family and her friends laughed, and the only thing that came from Tim's mouth was, "Mom, please stop." Larry did not do anything to stop her either. She had ruined my wedding experience. She had arranged the worst honeymoon ever. She hired a company to book our arrangements, and we had an absolute awful time. After our honeymoon, we came home to a fully redecorated house. Linda had redecorated the whole house according to her liking, and I felt like I had no control over my marriage. Tim defended it and said he liked it, and I fought with him and had the house decorated again pretty soon, according to how I liked it. Linda hated it, but I didn't care. I changed everything and threw out the house and the stuff that she brought just to spite her. Since our wedding, she's been a regular unwanted guest. She keeps coming over, and I can't say anything against it. She keeps calling our house my son's house, and she comes over and criticizes every single thing. She doesn't like my cooking, the way I keep the stuff, or even the way I look. She keeps trying to change the way things happen in my household, and when we all go out as a family, Linda does not leave any stone unturned to demean me or make me feel unwanted. She constantly insults me in front of everyone, and Tim does not say a word against her. She's always humiliating me in front of everyone, and I try my best to avoid going out with him, but she insists that we all spend time together. She doesn't like it if I try to control my own husband and wants Tim to listen to her and not to me. Tim and I have a perfect relationship when his mom is not around. Our arguments involve talking rather than shouting at each other's faces, and everyone envies us and thinks our life is absolutely perfect. There was an issue initially, but we've worked on it and tried to get real hard to finally maintain a work-life balance. We go out, we have fun. The sex life isn't really bad either, except for the time his mom is home when we don't make our love out of respect for her. Everything else is going amazing. His mother is the only thing that's adding poison to our perfectly fine relationship, though. One day, my mother-in-law came home to demand a grandchild. That's right. She started throwing tantrums like an absolute toddler. She then proceeds to demean me for being, quote, less of a woman and for not bearing a child, and after almost 10 years of marriage, that to add. She forced me to go to a fertility doctor, and I told her that's not the issue, we just didn't want a child yet. The problem was not me, it was Tim. Tim was not ready to have a kid. I've always wanted a baby, but Tim just wasn't ready. Linda kept insisting that we needed to have a child, and Tim did not say anything about it, and I was becoming the bad guy in the situation. It was starting to irk me that my husband was not speaking up against his mother. He even refused to take my side or defend me, and it was embarrassing that my husband did not have my back against his mom. I felt completely alienated when they were together. My husband is a completely different person around her. Our 10th anniversary was nearing, so I wanted to do something special for it. I did not want to be in town because the last anniversary was spent with his parents on a double date, and it was awful. So I decided to plan something special since 10 years is such a huge milestone. I booked a luxurious villa for 2 on a secluded island where it would be just the 2 of us. The thought of us being together alone on an island was so exciting, and I kept daydreaming about it. Of course, I could not surprise him by going. I let him know that I was taking him somewhere special for our anniversary. He loved the idea, and kept asking me where we were going, where are we going, blah blah blah. We were talking about it and giggling when Linda barged in and said she wanted to come too. I got up, and I shouted, "No!"
I then made up an excuse that it was for couples only and that the number of people had already been booked, and she kept insisting that she'd talk to them about, taking her aboard too. Tim clearly didn't want her either, and I could see it written on his face, but he did not utter a single word against it. Before we knew it, her bags were packed to join us for our anniversary trip. I was so enraged at the whole idea. Tim was not very happy either, and I had put a lot of effort and thought into arranging the staycation. Everything we were supposed to do was scheduled. Even our bedroom was planned. I knew we could not do all the activities we were supposed to do because of Linda. I wanted to just cancel the whole thing because there was no point in going. We left the house for the trip and picked Linda up for her house. She made me get out of the driver's seat and insisted her son drive because she did not trust me enough to drive. Ugh, I had to tell Tim how to get there, so it ruined the whole surprise element. We were also late for dinner because we had to make multiple stops due to Linda's travel sickness. I had dinner specially made for us, which got cold because we were late. Linda was a complete mood killer. Linda kept finding faults in the arrangement throughout the dinner. She kept making suggestions on what I could have done better in planning the trip. I rudely blurted out that she should have kept all these suggestions in mind while planning her son's honeymoon. I had hit the nail right on the head. She was visibly offended but speechless because I was right. The villa was only meant for two. It was a single bedroom, which Linda was going to sleep in. I and Tim had to sleep on the couch, which, although luxurious and comfortable couch, was not the same as the bed. We cut a small cake to celebrate our 10-year anniversary and went to sleep. Tim instantly fell asleep somehow, and my anger kept me awake. I got up and went to the balcony. I got lost in thought looking at the sea, but then was reminded of my mother-in-law again. I knew I needed to do something, and I decided that this time I was not going to hold back. We weren't in our town, so Linda could not run back to her house. I was going to give her hell, and I wasn't even going to let Tim stop me. I was so exasperated that I did not even care if I offed her. I went to her room and left the window ajar. She could not stand the cold, and it was quite nippy. She was starting to sneeze all morning, and Linda is absolutely allergic to peanuts. So I took revenge by serving sailfish at my wedding by ordering a dish that I knew had a hint of peanuts in it without her knowing. Little did I know, the poor thing forgot her EpiPen. Luckily, the island had paramedics for emergencies, and she had to rest the whole day. It gave me and Tim the opportunity to do all the beach activities together. When we came back after a fun day, Linda tried to make us feel guilty about not taking care of her the whole day. I told Linda that we missed her and that she should join us the next day for the hike, and I told her that the hike was very difficult and that maybe she could not do it. This hurt her ego, and she said that she would definitely be able to do it, so the next day, throughout the whole hike, I kept asking Linda whether she was tired or not. She kept claiming that she was okay, and she had overexerted herself on the hike but did not admit to it. Tim was concerned, but she assured him that she was fine. Linda came back to the villa with swollen feet, and I was laughing on the inside. She was trying to prove that she was simply not weak, and I was enjoying taking advantage of it, to be honest. She went straight to bed, which allowed me and Tim time to enjoy a nice romantic dinner together. The next day, I ordered a dish that she did not like. I argued that everything was pre-ordered according to Tim and me, and that I did not know she would come. She was so hungry, so she had to eat what I ordered. She said she did not want to join us that day. She wanted to go to the souvenir shop. I gave her the wrong directions and thought it would be a bit funny. I took Tim to enjoy some time at the beach, and Linda got lost. She also fell into the thorny bush. It took her a long time to find her way back, and no one else was in sight, and when we got back to the room, she was covered in thorns, and she complained she got lost to Tim. She started to cry. We immediately packed our bags to go home, as Linda seemed to be very upset and sick. It turned out to be the worst vacation ever for Linda. We dropped Linda off at home and went back to our own houses. Tim acted cold. I asked him what the problem was, and he said he knew that I was the one who gave her the wrong directions, and he did not like the way that I behaved with his mother on the trip. We got into a huge argument. I told him that I don't like the fact that his mother is constantly present in our relationship and that he needs to tell her to leave. I complained that he did not stand up for me all these years his mother demeaned me. The next day, I came home from work and said that I wanted a divorce. I told him that the vacation was the last chance he had to redeem himself, and I also went ahead to tell him that I don't like the person I'm becoming because of his mother. I expressed my need for a partner who would stick up for me no matter what, and Tim begged me to give him a chance just to sort everything out. But I stayed adamant. I told him that I needed someone better. Me and Tim now sleep in separate rooms, and Tim tries to make efforts to reconcile, and yes, I love him, but I can't. I don't feel respected in this relationship because of Linda. I feel that Tim really should tell Linda to respect our boundaries, right? I gave Tim numerous opportunities throughout the years, and he clearly sees that there is a problem. He does not like Linda's constant meddling either, but he won't do anything about it. I know it's his mother, and he probably doesn't like arguing with her, but it's costing his wife. I don't think any woman would have stood by his mother's behavior for so many years. I've also been thinking a lot about whether I went too far on the vacation trip, and yes, I know I'm a jerk for my actions, right? I did try to harm her physically. I gave her food which triggered her allergies. I made her suffer because I was angry. Linda brought out a horrible person in me that I never wanted to become. The final thing I want to ask you guys is divorce the right thing to do? I just need a bit of clarity. I hope I'm not ruining a perfectly good relationship here. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So today's story has 3 updates, and this mother-in-law might be the most overbearing mother-in-law we've seen on the channel in quite some time. Linda is beside herself. But a lot of people in the original comments are saying that OP is going too far, especially with the peanut allergy. And she didn't have an EpiPen. It could have turned out horrible, devastating. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section. We have 3 updates to hop into. If you guys are new to the channel, you're going to want to subscribe for daily videos. So smash that subscribe button and let's see what's going on with this mother-in-law. Hello again. It's Jane. The post is an update in connection with the last post I wrote about my mother-in-law, Linda. I would like to start off by thanking all of you for the immense support and love that you've shown. I felt alone at the time because I had yet to tell everyone about my decision to divorce Tim. Thank you all for the comments in the support section of what I did on the trip. I'm only human, and these things do happen, and now I know that I've made the right decision to divorce Tim. I should have seen the red flags earlier, I know. I don't know why I waited 10 years for this, but as they say, it's never too late. It's all out in the open now. Our families have been informed about it too, and well, we were going to part ways. So, I thought the whole process would be clear and simple, but oh boy, I was wrong. Linda added drama to the mix, that's for sure, and she was enraged that she was the reason for the divorce. She thought that I blamed the reason for our divorce on her, whereas it was actually my inability to be a good wife. Tim clearly wanted to sort things out, but Linda was just making it absolutely worse. She said she knew it was going to end one day. She reminded me that I signed a prenup and that I was not going to get a single penny. Her words upset me, and she started complaining about me to everyone in town. She started spreading false rumors about me being a cheater, and that's why Tim is finally fed up and he's the one who decided to divorce. Some people actually believed her too, and I get these weird looks when I'm out in the streets. Tim and his family are, quote, the town favorites. Most people are in support of them, and now everywhere I go, I'm being tormented for not being a good wife. All of this is extremely painful for me. Linda told Tim that he needed to kick me out of the house as soon as possible, and he can't just kick me out of the house because it's my house too. Linda came home one day and threw all my stuff out. Linda went far this time, and yes, it hurt me. Even more is that Tim could see that what was happening was wrong but made no attempts to stop Linda. I could see the guilt in his apologetic eyes, but he still chose to be by his mother's side. I picked up my stuff and left, absolutely enraged. At that very moment, I knew even more that I had to make the right decision. I went to my parents' house, and now I'm in a search of an apartment for myself. I've decided that now I need to focus on my business. I'm an entrepreneur and can't let stuff like this ruin the work I've put into my business. I spent so many years on this, and I can't let one thing ruin another. I feel really sad that my marriage is coming to an end. I just can't stop crying. I loved him, and if only he would stand up for me once in a while. Linda's going too far, as he's not speaking against her even when she's crossing all the limits, and on the surface, I don't care. But deep down, I just want him to finally realize how wrong he is and make amends. We're going to be divorced pretty soon, and it's going to be difficult for me. I'll still be posting updates, though. Documenting the whole process and hearing from you is helping me cope. I have to stay strong on the outside, but I'm breaking apart on the inside. I'm also trying to stay strong in front of my parents. But I think it's time to speak to them. I need their comfort and support, and I've been acting pretty distant because they feel I and Tim could still sort things out. They're trying their best for us to reconcile, and they're just simple people who feel I'll be happier when I'm with my partner. It's going to be difficult to make them understand that I'm better off away from Linda and Tim. Thanks again to everyone for reading and supporting me. Update number 2. Hey guys, I know I have not updated in such a long time. It's been about a year, and I don't know how many readers I've still hooked, but it's been a bit crazy in the past few months. The news I'm going to give you is going to shock you all. Linda revealed her worst colors over time, and I'm here to tell you about everything that happened. Tim still wanted to reconcile, but thought he was right for not speaking up against his mother. He insisted we go to couples counseling, and I had to go with him. I did not want to give the marriage a second chance, but I still attend the sessions. The marriage counselor only started the obvious, and she told Tim the truth in a very diplomatic and kind way. To sum it up, she said that Linda is a real jerk, and that he should have stood up for me a long time ago, and now Linda and Tim both know that I'm not the one in the wrong, and my demands are not unnecessary. I still wanted to go ahead with the divorce because I did not hear from Tim that he'd make the amends and change and protect me from his mother. Nor did his mother say she'd be nicer to me and not meddle in my marriage. Tim wanted to reconcile but did not want to solve our issues, and he wanted things to go back to the way that they were. I couldn't let that happen. I love him and did feel like giving in, but the thought of hell that Linda gave me over the years just gives me the strength to not go back. I came home one evening to the realization that I had not had my period for more than a month. I was due after we came back from the trip, and I checked and realized that I was in fact pregnant. This changed everything. I knew Tim was not keen on having a baby, so I was confident that Tim would not want anything to do with my child. The fact that Tim did not want a child despite our planning for it for the future was one of the reasons I was hell-bent on separating. Little did I know that I was wrong. I told Tim about my pregnancy, and he was absolutely over the moon ecstatic. He begged me to get back together with him. Linda felt the same, and the whole family, including mine, wanted us to get back together. Linda had already started acting like we had gotten back together herself, and she started controlling everything. I was at my parents' house, so they let her in. She would control what I ate and all my habits, and I felt suffocated by everyone's behavior, so I decided to move out of my parents' house. I made it clear to everyone that I still have not changed my decision, and we're still getting a divorce. Linda did not like my actions and insisted that they just get custody of my child after birth. I wasn't going to let them have their way. Even if I let go of my child, I knew I did not want my child to grow up under the care of that tyrannical, stupid woman who's a coward and a people pleaser like Tim is. To get custody of my baby, they were going to have to wait until my baby was born. I got a divorce from Tim, but despite my best efforts, I could not get them out of my life. Linda kept trying to control me under the pretext of my baby. She would show up at my workplace and at my house, and she would have food sent over all the time. She would follow me everywhere, and it made my life a living hell, and her presence just caused a huge amount of stress, and I did not want to complain to the police. My pregnancy made me feel so sick, and going for legal help caused me a lot of stress. I went as far as telling Linda that the baby is not Tim's and that I actually cheated, just to get her off my back. She was not very convinced. Due to my annoyance with Linda and feeling lonely at the same time, I did not have a happy pregnancy. The divorce was hard on me, and I dealt with a lot of mental health issues. Linda was making them a lot worse. She had no compassion for me, and it was all about the baby for her. Tim was with me during my birth, and I had a beautiful baby boy. I moved back to my parents' house after the birth because I could not do it on my own. I strictly told my parents that I did not want Linda or Tim around. They finally understood and would not let Linda or Tim near us. My actions absolutely infuriated Linda, and what followed was a messy legal battle between us fighting for my child. Linda tried her best to get custody of my kid, but I insisted that I wanted sole custody. I didn't want anything to do with their family again. I did not want my child with them either. They tried to deem me unfit to take care of a child, and they hired the best lawyer to try to take my child away from me. I aggressively fought with them too, and I hired a good lawyer named Glenn. The things they claimed in court were absolute nonsense, and they tried to prove I was an alcoholic and abusive. They made up exaggerated stories from the time I and Tim were married to prove their allegations. I had lost all respect for Tim in my eyes. I could not believe he would lie and backstab me like that. It was all painful to watch. I could prove that Linda was controlling and Tim was a bad husband. Well, it made my case a bit stronger if I could, and I got what I wanted. I won the case, and Linda got what she deserved, and I told them that if both of them had treated me right, things would have been so much different. I could see the defeated look in Linda's eyes. I got the court to order them to stay away from me and my child as Linda's behavior was causing me so much stress. My baby and I now live happily. This is the most peaceful I've felt in a very long time, and I finally got rid of Linda. I'm going to resume going to work just a couple days, and my focus will only be on taking my business to new heights and taking care of my baby. Thank you all for your support in the last post. I did not get the opportunity to reply to everyone. You all wanted an update, so I've written this. I hope this answers a lot of your questions. Update number 3. This is the final post by OP. Hey again. A lot of you have been asking me what my baby's name is, and I did not really want to reveal it here as I want to keep my privacy intact. To those who loved my story and supported me and continuously asked for updates, I could not fathom that my well-being mattered so much to you, but thank you. Thanks for asking how I've been and giving me such love in the comment section. I have not gotten much support from my family. They did not like my decision to get divorced. At first, I wasn't sure either, but as time went by, Tim and Linda showed their true colors. I realized that I have made the right decision. I want to tell you all about what happened to Linda and Tim after the whole court hearing. It was really tough on them. But did Linda realize what she did was wrong? Nope. She could not directly meet me, but she spread all sorts of bullcrap across town. I had a lot of people come up to me and tell me I was so wrong for not letting them see my child. I dismissed them all and went on with my life, and I knew I was not in the wrong, but everyone tried to tell me otherwise. Not only did I get sole custody of my child, but Tim has to pay child support too. My life has been so much better since the divorce, but I could not say the same for Tim. Linda continued her controlling ways, and now that Tim was alone, Linda wanted to take full control of his life. She wanted Tim to live according to her ways, and yes, he complied at first, but he got annoyed as the days went by, until he could not take it anymore. Tim started arguing with Linda. He finally stood up against her, and better late than never, I guess. He told her that she was the reason for his divorce and that he could not see his own child. Linda was shocked by Tim's behavior. He was filled with regret and loneliness, and he finally realized that he was wrong and wished that he stood up against, Linda earlier. He completely cut ties with Linda and went to live on his own. Tim contacted me a couple times to reconcile, but I'm not going to budge at all. He got what he deserved, and so did Linda. Larry and Linda don't have the best relationship either, so Linda was all on her own without her son, and both of them weren't happy with their lives. I guess this is what you get for taking the people in your life for granted. I'm not a bad person. So I decided that it would be better that I let Tim see my son every once in a while. But only Tim could see him, not Linda. I don't want that jerk anywhere near my child. Of course, everything's going to go through the legal process just in case they decide to overstep their boundaries, and my son is growing up a happy, healthy boy. And I'd like it if he knew his father, too. This will definitely be my last update on this, guys. Whatever happens, I know that I now have the strength to handle things all on my own. And I'll decide what's best for my baby. Thanks again for your advice, love, and support. Bye for now.
I'm married to a jerk, and my mother-in-law's a jerk. I'm a successful orphan who rose above all odds in life. I work in a corporate firm, and that's besides the large grocery store which I opened a few years back. Even though I was single and content, I hoped that I would have a family of my own someday. I had capable hands working for me at the grocery store, and a lady called Lillian was my manager. Lillian's presence in my grocery store had been instrumental to the kind of success that we recorded over the years. I would sometimes not show up at the grocery store because of my work schedule, but whenever I did, I would discover that we had recorded greater profits than before. I came to the store on a weekend to see how things were going, and that's when I saw the man, Richard, who would be my husband. Richard was already dating someone at the time when we met. He was at the grocery store with his girlfriend, and they were quarreling over something. Well, actually, it was more like she was the one embarrassing him. If I remember clearly, Richard's fiancée had picked up some stuff which was way more than his credit card could afford, and that moment the card was declined. She blasted him for embarrassing her in public. I had to step in because the drama was already attracting attention. I asked the cashier to accept the payment which Richard's credit card could make, and then waive off the remaining bill. Richard was grateful for my generosity, but his girlfriend turned to him and told him how he ought to be ashamed of himself. Richard did not even reply harshly to her. He just sweetly asked that they left the place. The gesture was admirable because if I was a guy and my lady disrespected me like that in public, oh boy, the relationship was as good as over. I showed up at the grocery store the other weekend, and that's when Lillian told me that the young man, Richard, had been coming to the grocery store almost every day looking for me, but she did not know why. She was still talking to me when Richard walked into the store. He said that he's been coming just to say thank you for the intervention. I noted that he did not have to come back, but I knew it was his way, just like every other guy, to want to establish something with a lady. All the same, I was respectful and we began talking from there. We became friends, and Richard soon began confiding in me, and most of the things he said were complaints about how his relationship with the woman was draining him. My reply to all of this was, if a relationship was this toxic, then why are you still there? Richard then disclosed to me that his girlfriend, whose name is Wendy, is a family friend and everybody, including his mom, expects the marriage to work out. He claimed that she had been helpful to his mother and he would raise dust once he broke up with her because everyone, including his mother, would be coming for his head. I advised him it's better to end the relationship than get married to someone he did not love. Those people who were insisting or expecting him to get married to Wendy would not be there when his home and marriage would turn into a war zone, with him being the casualty. I told him that he would be doing both himself and the lady good.
So I received a call from Lillian during the weekdays about a lady who was at the grocery store making demands to see me. Otherwise, she was going to tear the place down. I asked Lillian what the reason behind the lady's anger was, but Lillian noted that the lady did not say. She only hurled insults at me, and I quickly obtained permission from my boss and headed straight to my store. Once I got there and saw the lady's face, I knew I'd seen her somewhere, but honestly, it was difficult trying to remember the exact place. She started by asking me why I had decided to ruin her life, and I asked what she meant. It was when she then accused me of attempting to steal her man that I knew she was Richard's girlfriend. Well, Wendy said Richard had broken up with her and that I was the reason behind it. So, she created a commotion without even allowing me to say a word. I had no other option than to have the security throw her out of the premises. Yes, I advised Richard to only get married to someone he loved, and I had never for once harbored the thought of being called his woman. I immediately called Richard and asked if we could meet. He showed up at the store within 10 minutes, and I told him what transpired. Richard confirmed that he had ended things with Wendy just as I advised, and because he found love in someone else. I wondered, how could you find love in another when he just broke up with Wendy, and the next thing he said almost had me believe he was listening to my thoughts. He said he was in love with me. Well, I was thrown off balance and did not know what to say. I asked him to leave my house, but Richard was persistent. He kept on insisting that I was the woman for him, and I finally decided to give him a chance. I had a problem, though. What was his mother going to say? Richard noted that his mother would initially not welcome the development, but she would have no other option but to accept reality. Richard called me one day when I was at the grocery store and told me that his mom was coming down there and she was probably coming to make trouble. He asked me to just overlook whatever she said or did and promised that everything would be all right. I was somehow scared as I waited Richard's mother's arrival. I recognized her the moment she walked into the store because Richard had shown me her picture on his phone in the past. Richard's mother stood for some second while using her eyes to scan around the store. I guess she was impressed. She finally requested to see the owner. I greeted her and she responded with a warm smile. Well, I was surprised because my expectations was far, too much, like she was going to lash out at me. She began talking about how Richard had told her a lot about me, and how she would not stand in the way of our relationship if we decided to take it up the notch. Well, I was grateful for the things that she said, and I showed my gratitude by compelling her to pick some stuff for herself, and I noted that it's free. Richard was even more surprised than I was when he told me about the mother's reaction. He could not believe it because she had argued with him before leaving the house and she had promised to make sure I stayed away from him. Richard wasted no time in proposing to me the moment it was clear what his mother's blessing was, and we never heard from Wendy. I believe the news went around was that she had traveled overseas to further her career. So we got married, and that was when the whole manipulation started. I was pregnant with our first child just a month after the wedding, and my husband came to me to ask if his mother could move in with us, to live with us. It was an odd request because I know that two women living under the same roof would want to contest for influence. I was, however, curious to know why he made the request, and he said it's because his mother's rent was up and Wendy, who had been footing the bill, was no longer around. If you're observant, you would discover that I have not made mention of my husband being a lawyer, an engineer, or a professional in any field, and this is because he isn't. I can't say what he does. He was just everywhere. I offered to cover the cost of the rent, but Richard said his mother wanted to get a new apartment and she was no longer comfortable where she was and would do so while temporarily she was going to stay with us. Well, I reluctantly agreed to this request, and his mother moved in with us. I found her to be helpful because I was going through my first pregnancy and she was like my guide, and she was equally helpful in the area of chores. I gave birth to twins later on, and my husband and I agreed 2 was enough for now. I did not need to employ a nanny since my mother-in-law was around and willing to do the job without being asked. My kids, however, turned 4, and the burden on my mother-in-law was reduced. She began spending most of her time alone at home, and Richard soon approached me because of that. He said it was not good that a lady without a companion should stay all by herself every day, as it was dangerous to her mental health. I asked what we could do about it, and he suggested I got her a job in my grocery store. Well, my mother-in-law is 54, so she could be a worker at the store, but Richard was not okay with the position I needed her to fill. He said that I was asking her to do something meant for young people, and he suggested I placed her in a management position. Well, you know what? This was tough for me. I already had Lillian there, and to say she's doing well is an understatement. Besides, I knew my mother-in-law simply did not have the needed qualification. I finally came up with a balance. I would have both of them operate as co-manager. My move was the best because each person would help the other do well, and I did not check up on how things were at the grocery store till the month's end when I went to inspect the books. I was enraged with what I saw. Not only had our profit dropped by 20%, but there were equally some irreconcilable figures in the account. So I asked Lillian, and she claimed that my mother-in-law, who by the way was not around, was to be held accountable for this. I blasted Lillian for not calling it to my attention. I went home and asked for an explanation for my mother-in-law, and she accused Lillian of being responsible for the decline in the profit at the grocery store. It was just her word against Lillian's, and I felt Lily was telling the truth, and I had my reasons. Lillian has been a loyal worker, and we have recorded success during the times that she handled the position. Besides, when the grocery store had started, the situation was that the only time we did not do well, and it just so happened to be when my mother-in-law was sharing the management position with someone else. The smart move to do was to remove the person who was the most likely problem, but I chose to be stupid to preserve the peace in the family, so I called Lillian and informed her that I was taking her off the management role. Lillian was not happy and she would be a worker again, but you know what? She did not complain. I felt bad, because here was someone who had worked for me for years with tangible proof, and it was not fair to demote her for something I was 90% sure she was innocent of. I told my mother-in-law that she would now be the sole manager of my business, and she was pleased. Even my husband claimed that I've made the right decision. Well, I initially kept a close watch on my mother-in-law, and she seemed to be doing pretty well, honestly, at the start of things, so I did get a bit relaxed. There was a lot to do at my workplace during that time, so my next visit to my store was in 2 months, and I nearly died. Everything was in shambles, and a few workers had resigned while 2 were fired by my mother-in-law. These were people who had been with me all the while, and I queried my mother-in-law for the decisions which she had made, and she just made excuses. Lillian was still a worker, and no matter how much I wanted chiding her for keeping quiet and not informing me that things were going amiss, I knew I could not do so because I wronged her. Besides, I would later find out that she's been threatened by my mother-in-law. I immediately started rectifying my mistakes. The very first step was to pull my mother-in-law out of the management position. I apologized to Lily and reinstated her. I equally apologized to the staff who were left because I knew their zeal to put in their best was already battered. My mother-in-law was not a co-manager with Lillian like the first time, and since she could not work under her, she had to leave. She left the store in anger and all, and I knew I would have to deal with her nagging at home. I got to the house and my husband was already there. He and his mom ignored me, and you know what? I did the same. It was later during the night that I spoke with husband about it. I explained to Richard the situation in which his mother had put my business, but rather than emphasize with me, he simply expressed his displeasure at the fact that I fired his mom for messing up my business. What else was I supposed to do when his mother was underperforming and the reason for the fall? Well, Richard asked that I reinstate his mom, but I told him that it was not possible. How could he even make such a request when he was aware his mother was the reason my business was in shambles? The discussion with my husband did not yield any fruit. He was stubborn and tried playing the emotional blackmail game, but I, on the other hand, was not willing to be manipulated. I just went ahead to ignore him and his mom. My home became toxic after that, as my husband and his mother just acted like I was against their welfare. I initially did not let their attitude get to me, but then, when my mother-in-law began behaving nonchalantly towards everything in the house, I got irritated and decided that nonsense had to stop. I went one day from my work to my kids' school to pick them up, as my mother-in-law, who usually did, was no longer helping out, and my husband always had a place he needed to be, even though I could not spell out what his actual job was. So, I got back home with my kids, and everywhere was a mess, and my mother-in-law, who was around, was unbothered by it. I asked why the whole place was upside down, and she replied by asking what I expected her to do. I didn't say any other thing. I just attended to my children before going to tidy my house. So my scope of duty had been broadened from the breadwinner to both breadwinner and cleaner. It was something that I could not keep up with, so I had to employ the services of a cleaner, who, by the way, comes 2 times a week. Her job was to tidy the house and do laundry for my kids. My mother-in-law, however, began using her for her errands, and that was not my agreement with the cleaner. I did not reprimand my mother-in-law, but I asked the cleaner to decline any request that she would make which was outside the scope of our agreement. My mother-in-law wanted to take advantage of the cleaner as usual, and when the cleaner declined, she went to her son and told him that I asked the cleaner to disrespect her. Richard confronted me about the issue last night when we were about to go to bed, and it seems that is all he ever does in home. Confront me about issues which had to do with his mother not getting her way. The whole thing, both of them were just making me mad. I was doing my best to not explode. I did not argue much that night, as I was feeling really tired and needed to sleep, but the whole thing was a pointer that his mother had long overstayed at our home and needed to leave because her presence was now a threat to my peace of mind. Update number 1. My mother-in-law met me 3 days ago and asked that I give her a certain amount of money for something that she would not disclose to me. I could not meet her demand at that point because I had a lot going on with me. I was carrying the financial load of the family, and I equally placed her and her son, my husband Richard, on a monthly allowance. Besides, I was making plans to rent a new apartment for her. She had stayed with us since Richard and I got married, and that was supposed to be temporary. I spoke with my husband later on and told him that I was making arrangements to rent his mother's house, as I felt it was time for her to move out and stay on her own. But Richard asked if I was chasing his mother away. Was she supposed to be there in the first place? I reminded him that her stay was supposed to be temporary, but she had stayed with us for years. Richard said that I told his mom that I did not have the money that she asked for, but I wanted to give her money to rent a house and move out. He appealed to me to be a little bit patient with his mom, as having her live by herself at her age was not advisable. Richard's excuse did not make any sense, but I did not push further before I decided to endure her for a while. I came back home yesterday after picking my kids up from school, and I saw my mother with a visitor chatting away. I looked, and my eyes were not deceiving me. It was Wendy. Why on earth was my mother-in-law doing with my ex of my husband in my house? My kids greeted both of them, and I did not say a word to either of them. I just took my kids inside and attended to them. I eagerly waited for Wendy to leave the house before confronting my mother-in-law. I did not filter my words as I spoke to her and demanded to know why she was entertaining my husband's ex in my house. My mother-in-law said that Wendy was the daughter of a friend, and the fact that she did not end up with her son Richard did not mean that they were now enemies. I did not expect my mother-in-law to be this stupid. It was either she was naive or she just wanted to make me mad, because anybody with a brain would know it was wrong to bring her son's ex to his house, especially when their breakup had involved some form of tension. Richard's mom said she barely kept friends at her age. She needed company, and I left my mother and waited for Richard to come back from wherever he was. I told him about what transpired, and he was not happy that his mother had brought Wendy to the house. He told me he was going to talk to his mother, so a repetition like this would not occur. I told him that I was not against her being friends with his ex, but it was not ideal to have her come to the house, and that was the reason I wanted his mother to have a place of her own. If it was her place, she could bring whomever she wanted, and nobody would do anything against it. I don't know if Richard has spoken to his mom, but I hope he has, because I would not take it lightly should a reputation occur again. Update number 2. My mother-in-law's decided to be a thorn in my flesh, and I would pull her out. I got to my kids' school yesterday to pick them up, and I was surprised by, them telling me that they've been picked up by someone else. I felt it was my husband's mother, but it did not add up because I was told it was a young lady. I almost made a scene there because it was just my husband, me, and his mom who had been registered with the school to pick up the kids. But the staff noted that neither mine nor my husband's line was going through, and when they notified my mother-in-law, she confirmed that she had sent the young lady who had come to pick up the kids. I went straight home curious enough to know who this young lady was, and I suspected it was going to be Wendy. So I get to the house, and my mother-in-law was with my kids who were licking ice cream. My excitement rushed to me and began showing the things that Big Mommy had gotten for them. My kids called my mother-in-law Grandma, so I knew Big Mommy had to be someone else. So I asked why they were referring to that and who was she. My mother-in-law immediately answered and said it's Wendy. My blood was boiling as I asked her why she would let Wendy come close to my children. My mother-in-law, in her defense, said that she felt that I was too busy just to pick my kids up that day, and Wendy volunteered to help out. Her excuse was as stupid as I now believe she is. I know she just wanted to connect with Wendy. I immediately told her to go inside her room, pack her crap, and leave my home. I called Richard and asked him to come back home immediately, but he made some excuse about meeting with someone for a job position. This has always been his excuse. I simply told him that it was all right, but by the time he came home, he would not be meeting his mother because I was throwing her out. I cut the call. Richard appeared within 5 minutes, and he would have made up some excuse if I was calling him for something else, but apparently threatening his mom was what brought him home. I don't think either Richard or his mom had ever seen me in such anger. I told him that his mother was leaving my house this instant, and he knew it was no joke because his mother's things were already out. I initially wanted to rent a house for her, giving her money so that she could live there and move out while we're all still at peace, but I'm now kicking her out of my house without a dime. Richard tried his best to pacify me, and I had to calm down because when he pointed out that our kids were already scared as a result of the drama that was going on, I decided to let his mother stay because she would move out of my house within 3 weeks, and a dime of my hard-earned money would not be used to help her out. This is not the end of the matter. I plan on visiting Wendy too. Update number 3. Hey guys, so I just wanted to tell you I went to see Wendy like I said. I knocked on the door and she took some time to open it, and I announced I was here. I felt she would start fighting with me at the doorstep because I was equally prepared for a fight, but she smiled and asked me to come inside. I was not fooled by her smile and simply told her I was there to ask her to leave my family alone. Stop intruding on our lives. Wendy's warm appearance soon changed to that of a lioness ready to devour its prey. She told me that I had no right to tell her such because the husband I was married to was a result of my intrusion into her life. I did not have time to trade words with her, so I promised her a kind of reaction which she would not expect when I next saw her around my kids. I got to the house and my husband came back from the job interview which he claimed he went to. I told him. I went to go see Wendy and warned her to stay away from us, and he said that I did the right thing. He then tells me about the vacation he was planning on going with the kids, and he told me that he knew I was busy at work and such, and did not want to join them on their vacation. I wasn't allowed, apparently. His reason for planning a vacation, according to him, was to take our kids out of the tension that had built up in our home. I saw sense in what my husband said, to be honest, until I saw a text message on his phone that night while he was asleep. The message was from Wendy, and she talked about how it was a close call earlier that day. I began going through their messages, and I saw that Richard was at her place all day. There was no job interview anywhere, and he was even there when I visited her, and he just stayed in her bedroom listening to our conversation. I began reading through their chats, and I saw when Richard told Wendy that his mother was really happy, that she had shown up in our lives and was giving him the emotional strength and more to deal with the stress that I was putting him through. I discovered that he's been cheating on me with her, and his mother was by the side supporting him. The painful part was the vacation. Richard was using my kids as a means for a 2-week getaway with his lover. What do men want? I mean, I've given Richard everything, my body, money, just name it. His ex is not even rich or beautiful as I am, so what's his deal? I've not been able to sleep since yesterday night as I've been plotting how I would repay the deceit. Final update. My husband wanted a 2-week vacation, but I did not give him that. I gave him a permanent vacation out of my life. After the discovery I made, I began keeping a close watch on him. The time which I gave to his mom to move out of the house was almost up, but I approached her one morning amid my husband and pleaded with her to not bother leaving anymore, as I had recognized my wrong. My mother-in-law smiled like she had finally won the battle over who was in charge, but it was all part of my plan. I wanted to throw her out on the same day when her adulterous son would be back from his trip. I'd taken pictures of the chat between my husband and his lover at the so-called supported vacation with the kids, a vacation which I sponsored. I already had a little evidence of what was going on, but the vacation was the opportunity to get hard, solid evidence. So I hired a private investigator to trail them during the vacation, and well, Richard took our kids on a vacation, and I'm sure that he had a time of his life. The private investigator sent me photos and videos of my husband and Wendy getting cozy in public. I patiently waited for his return, but while I was at it, I met with my lawyer, and I got those divorce papers all ready and drafted. I waited till the weekend when my husband was supposed to return with our kids from vacation, and that's when I confronted my mother-in-law. I asked her if she's aware my husband was cheating on me. She feigned ignorance. I then disclosed to her that I knew all that's been going on, and, well, she was surprised. I kicked her out, right then and there. She was unprepared for it, and she had no place to go. She just stayed in front of the house with her belongings, and the fun part was when the Uber vehicle, which conveyed my husband and our kids, drove right into the house. Richard was surprised to find his mother stranded outside with her belongings. Richard was shocked when his mother noted that she's been thrown out. I opened the door and my kids rushed to me, and Richard wanted an explanation about what was going on, but I simply threw photo evidence at him and told him to get to the garage and get his crap, because he's not sleeping in my home. I would not tolerate him and his mom trying to rob me of my peace. Now, only had his mother asked my kids to call his ex, who was still his lover, Big Mommy, but she had encouraged him to go on a vacation with my kids and his lover. Richard argued that we were not divorced and I could not keep his kids from him, but I immediately produced divorce papers, and I handed them to him. He wanted to force his way into my home, but I promised to get the cops involved and even sue him for harassment after the divorce was over. Richard began begging, because both he and his mom were now stranded, and Wendy would not be willing the house to both of them because she only wanted Richard for the fun, not for marriage. The divorce would be official in just a few days. I hope you're all doing all right. I'll start this by saying that never in all my life and all my existence would I have thought that I would be the victim of one of the greatest plagues in the history of mankind: racism. Let's see, not for me, but for my family, more specifically for my children. My name's Ling, and I come from a Chinese family. I come to the United States when I was 2 years of age, and since then I've lived mostly in an Asian Chinese-centered community. I didn't meet the first Koreans or Japanese until I was 12 years of age, and otherwise I had to go through uncomfortable situations like any immigrant in the country. Things ranged from my appearance to my language, but I feel that I fared better than my parents who had to deal with racism in the workplace and on a social level. I, being so young, was able to camouflage myself better in today's environment, to the point where, when I started living independently at 19, I felt like I was in my own environment. Only I had slanted eyes, and to the changing world this was no big deal. Mind you, many have strange fetishes with Asian women, but luckily I did not get one of those freaks, although I knew a few, and that's when Gary showed up. Gareth, but friends and family call him Gary, appeared in my life at the best time of all, and when I was about to graduate, and I could have the privilege of being in the graduation pictures with him. Attentive, helpful, nice, and flirtatious. Being a 10 out of 10 for me from the first moment, so much so that we became boyfriend and girlfriend 2 months after we started dating, and in about 9 months we've already had the document that said in the eye of the state, we were husband and wife. Ironically, after 9 more months, we were having none other than a pair of beautiful twins, with the same Asian features that made my parents so happy. Mind you, there was a downside to the whole equation, and her name is Leslie. Leslie, also known as my mother-in-law. Gary's mom is a, special case. The lady is the epitome of everything that's wrong with the average American. Regionalist, nationalist, racist, and even classist. At first, she doesn't take kindly to her son dating an Asian, even though he was head over heels in love with me. They used to have arguments that he avoided telling me, so as not to make me sad, because he said that if he had known, I would not have agreed to go out with him in the first place, which, to be honest, most likely would have, been true. I found out about this sometime after we started dating. He took quite a while to introduce me to his mother precisely because of this, and he said it was going to be chaos to get those two opposites to collide. For my part, I told him that there's no problem to have a healthy coexistence. I know what it's like to deal with complicated people, and Gary saw himself as a good match, so I didn't see it as that bad. During our first meeting, his mother was very nice. She treated us to a home-cooked lunch, and by that time I decided to bring some wonton so I could open up to her a little more. It's something I've done since I was little, and, wonton, in case anybody reading this doesn't know, are kind of a very thin dough empanada type that are filled with pork. I have not found the first person to resist them, as their flavor is quite general tasty. So much so that we have a varied version for vegetarians with steamed vegetables. Anyways, I took the whole tray to share, excited to bring a little bit of my country's gastronomy to my mother-in-law's house, and you know what her answer was? I don't eat foreigner food. Sorry. And she said it with a rather cynical smile, as if it was not welcoming at her house. After that, my heart broke, and something inside me, call it a sixth sense, made me reflect on the relationship I would have with this woman. I know Gary argued with her sometime later, and even went so far as to oppose our marriage, but we were grown-ups now, so we could do whatever we felt like doing, and that's what we did. Now, you may be wondering, what about the babies? How do they connect to all this? How Leslie reacted? Well, it was a little bit murky. The reason I started writing this was to release tension I've been feeling about the situation, which has left some pretty strong after effects, by the way. You see, Gary fully supports the customs and traditions of my family. In fact, they love him very, very much. And even though he's a white man, we still feel him as one of us, even making an effort to learn the language, so when I gave him the proposal and let it be understood that it was not just a proposal, it was not like I was forcing him, that the names of our children to come would be Chinese, he was very excited. We had chosen some names, Ding Yang for our son and Ding Ting for our daughter, names that I've chosen since I was a child, and that I could have the fortune of being able to use both on the same occasion. And my luck is better, because after the pregnancy, due to some complications I had, I decided to get my tubes tied, so our little ones would be the end of the litter, and for us it was more than enough, but not for Leslie. As I said, she quite opposed to the cultural heritage of our children, considering that they've, should keep their American roots, and that's when she came up with the worst comment of all. It was a few days before they were born, asking us what names we would give the twins. We gave the answer, and she said, "You've got to be kidding me. No grandchild of mine is going to have a name like Ping Pong Yin Yang or Chow Pow or something like that. Name them Brian, Jessica, Roger, Annie." Of course, this went down very badly with me, and that generated some debate that went on for those days. Unfortunately, there was a big problem on the day of the birth, as Gary was with me in the room while I was in labor, and when it was over, he stayed with me while I was still weak. As it turned out, the nurse in charge of the registry were in the office, and certain grandmother of theirs was in charge of registering the babies on the birth control certificate. What was our surprise when we found out that the babies we had were Julius and Emily? She purposely got the names wrong, and Their recordings of now looking like this. Julius is the name of Gary's late father, and Emily is the name of a sister he had years ago, who sadly passed away a few days after she was born due to respiratory problems. While she passed it all off as a simple act of caring, no one could deny that in reality she did it to dishonor and even mock the inheritance that we were about to give the children. I remarked to him some time ago that usually, to preserve both conventional Asian values, some Korean and Chinese tend to have Western names as well, like one of my friends, Moi Fan, who is Alice here in America. They might as well have had a name like that when they were older, but she said that she had to ruin it all with her damn racism, and you won't believe the bureaucratic procedure involved in a name change. It's amazing how just a few little intentional ill words would end up making up go round and round in circles to get the names changed. In the end, we did it and decided to cut ties with Leslie for a couple of years. But those things could not stay so marked either. I mean, we're talking about our children's grandmother, so it's only natural that she should be a part of their lives. Growing up, they would often ask us about Grandma Leslie, and I would tell them it's a bit of a hassle to get to visit her, but without giving too many reasons or details away. That caused her to distance herself quite a bit from Gary too. While I was somewhat mild about the separation, Gary was blunt and said that she alone had offended millennia of culture and even disrespected the both of us. Want to know a fun fact about that? My parents were a deciding factor in speaking to Leslie again, as they said that we should not exclude her from our lives just because we think differently. They're very wise, at the risk of giving them a lot of flowers, as we say, a very noble thing. They have endured more racism in America than I have, and said that we would gain nothing by excluding her from the family. The truth is that this situation causes Leslie particular pain because of her family record. Let me explain. She had 3 children. Gary was the second. The first was Gary's older brother Anthony, but he decided to have a vasectomy and ended up cutting off the family bloodline right then and there. And Gary's little sister. Well, I told you how that turned out, so in theory, Gary was the only one who would perpetrate the family legacy, and thus Leslie, who always dreamt of her fantasy of the perfect American family, wanted her family to remain pure in every sense of the way, even when her son seemed to clip her wings with this desire. Well, I'll write this simply as an outlet. It's now been 10 years since the birth of the twins, and who were able to keep their original names given by us, so much so that we even decided to keep them in our normal dialect, without considering Western names at all. Of course, Leslie never gave up on her initiative, and almost always refers to Yang as Julius and Ting as Emily. Although they don't always get it right the first time. They're getting older now, and their interest in being with Grandma Leslie has gradually waned. Perhaps they've come to realize the exclusionary nature of their grandmother. They ended up being beautiful, beautiful children full of love, who have had the good fortune to live in a very inclusive environment. Times change, and so do societies, even though a few maintain the same deviant trajectory. I say this because currently Leslie still holds a certain disdain for our culture, and recently a situation happened that brought that little hidden resentment that she had to the surface again. But I think I'll tell you guys another time. It's late, and there's classes tomorrow, so I have to get the kids up early. I've had some free time these last few days, and that's why I've been writing this. It's not much common hobby of mine, but I like to do these sort of things. Anyways, thanks for reading. Update number 1. Hello again. I was telling you yesterday, something happened that made me come up with all this, and it was that Leslie told the kids that she was going to throw them a birthday party, whatever they wanted. Whether it was a princess robot, some sports or TV series, or a movie, anything. But the kids and I have been talking for a while about having an Asian-themed birthday. I'm talking typical foods, dragons, Chinese, characters everywhere, and pretty cute red and gold decorations. According to them, even their friends and classmates are excited about the idea. But, as you can imagine, not everybody is happy about it. As if they have brought back their hatred and resentment for my culture, Leslie started to, quote, attack the kids gently, asking them if this was really what they wanted. I'm honest and tell you that I've never in my life forced my children into anything. Even when I had to drop them off at school for the first time, I did my best to not let them miss me, making them understand that they would be well taken care of there. The goal is just to make them feel comfortable with the idea, but those ideas can be harmful when injected, as Leslie tries to do. She wants to insert herself into their lives so she can have a typical American grandchildren, not knowing all the harm that she's doing to them. Anyways, the kids were uncomfortable when they told her, "But Grandma, we want a Chinese birthday." And Leslie asked if that's really what they wanted and not a normal birthday like the other kids. Believe me, it's so weird to see kids being uncomfortable. I mean, how can an adult ever offend a couple of 10-year-olds? They simply told her that they wanted a birthday like their mom and her family. Leslie's reaction was not very positive, to say the least. The children tell me that there came a point when I was not present where she asked them very seriously if they really loved their mother's culture, and that, when in fact the United States had so much to offer them. She went so far as to tell them that they would not even get, to know China for several years, so it wasn't worth getting excited about something that isn't even at a present in their lives, as everything else. But they said that, thanks to my side of the family, they always feel in harmony with the side of the cultural heritage. That surprised me quite a bit because it was basically a "shut up, Grandma," but using much more kind words. We have not spoke to Leslie since, and it's amazing how little by little the kids went from a time of, "Let's go visit Grandma," to, "We have to go to Grandma's," and that's very sad. Leslie herself is finding that which she fears the most, and that's being rejected with the last hope of her lineage, even if it's mixed with my genes. At this point, she doesn't care so much anymore, as she just wants to have a perfect American grandchildren. That makes me a little sick to my stomach, and we have avoided telling Gary about this, because then he goes into this rage and starts attacking his mother. He would start with, "Leave the kids alone, Mom. They want to be happy with their culture, our culture." And she would respond with, "It's not your culture, and neither is it theirs, because they were born here, and this is where they belong." It's such common nonsense these days. I feel like it's the same conversation repeating over and over and over again. In the end, it's the children who end up hurting, and that's not the goal. The twins' birthday is still 2 weeks away, and I'll almost start planning for it, as it still takes a lot of preparation in between. Update number 2. Hello again. I report on the children's birthday and the situation with Leslie, which is somewhat unpleasant. First and foremost, everything went well. The kids enjoyed themselves, ate treats, broke a piñata, and there was even a magic show. All very nice, and the only downside was when it was time to open the presents, where the children decided everything from the dolls and action figures to school supplies. Of course, when it was time to open Grandmother's present, Gary and I were a little apprehensive. We invited Leslie half out of obligation, rather than for the fun and pleasure, as my parents kept insisting that we had to tolerate her racist behavior. Anyways, Grandma Leslie's gift were nothing more and nothing less than pure nationalistic paraphernalia. American flags, stuffed eagles, even a slime cheeseburger, as well as posters of the presidents and coloring books of the White House, about the history of the country, including something I didn't even know existed. Anyways, the atmosphere felt very heavy, and we could see that in the children's faces, who were both disappointed and confused. It was one of the most grotesque scenes we've ever seen. Even so, they never lost their manners and thanked Grandma for their gifts. Even the other guests remained doubtful about this moment, as it was a rather awkward silence. At least until the next gift arrived, and of course not before Grandma Leslie had delivered a nationalistic speech, saying in front of a large community of Asians that the children had a great joy of being able to live in the best country in the world. My parents later gave me little reason as to why I had not invited her in the first place. That woman is a racist and still won't accept it. My parents told me that in such a case the idea would be to take the children away from her. It's a sad scenario, we know, but Leslie perfectly represents everything that's wrong with the stereotype of the average American. Later, we asked the kids how they were doing, and they said they were doing great, but then they asked us several questions about their grandmother. I ask you, how do you explain to your kids that their grandmother is a racist and that we don't want them to hang out with her anymore? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Update number 3. Hello again. I have a somewhat awkward update for everybody listening. Well, it turns out that the kids don't want to go to Grandma Leslie's anymore. And I quote, because they don't feel comfortable around her. Turns out that one of those days we had to leave them in her care simply because everybody was busy. Gary was on a business trip and I was in the office as usual, so Leslie was the only option. However, when we returned home, the kids were very quiet, more so than usual, saying that they did not want to go back to grandmother's, and when I asked them why, they were very quiet. When I asked them why again, it's because of one of the comments she made about, quote, their race, and she would show movies where the Asians were the villains and the Americans, as usual, were the good guys. Apparently, poor Ting, who told me she kept being referred to as Emily even though she always corrected Grandma and told her that's not her name, was somewhat traumatized after a war movie of Americans versus Japanese was played. The thought of people similar to them being hurt in such horrible ways by those who were supposed to be their neighbors made her feel so panicky that she could not sleep that night. I asked the children not to discuss it with their father, as I was going to take care of it. If Gary ever found out, World War III would break out. Leslie has slowly but surely earned a place in my community as Ling's crazy racist mother-in-law, and I'm not proud of it at all. At this point, I feel that the next severing of ties we have with her is going to be final, with no chance of redemption whatsoever. We'll have to put the kids in a daycare or something, but I can't stand it anymore that they're suffering with every action, gesture, or word their grandmother gives them. And I saved the worst for last. Little Yang, after his trip to Leslie's, told me if there was any way to normalize his eyes, as he wanted to have them, quote, normal, like other people. That was a point of no return for me, and from now on, my children will remain in the friendliest, purest, and most respectful environment with their excellent Asian heritage. Update number 4. Hello. It's a lump in my throat to have to comment on this, but I've recently received a call from Leslie. It's been 2 months since my last update, and it's been an awkward one in the extreme, since in all the time we have not visited or kept in communication like we usually do. The thing is, as I said, the kids were no longer comfortable around her, and already our friends and relatives have signed Leslie up almost as public enemy number 1. The problem was that she called me asking for a little audience between the two of us, so I went over to her house. She had changed the decor, or rather everything was a bit out of place, as if she had stopped cleaning her house a long time ago. Even though I had not been there for a few months, she looked neglected and had dark circles under her eyes. Even for somebody her age, it looked bad. She told me that she's been pretty sad for a while now about the whole kid thing, and wanted to know how she could get back to being with her grandchildren. Well, we had a rather sour conversation since it was talking about certain rude truths, and like the fact that she did not like me for just existing. I asked her where the dislike of foreigners even came from, and she told me she didn't know, just that she was raised that way from a young age and does not like the mixing of races, considering it unnatural. I was surprised at how light she felt about talking about such things with me in front of her. She told me that she wanted to have grandchildren who could fully enjoy their country of origin, but I asked her if she did not have any ancestry of some kind. She told me that she had some Irish and Italian, and that's when I told her there's nothing wrong with that, but she kept bringing up facial features, something that I felt like kicking myself for.
It's like complaining that she has very white skin, to the point of looking like an albino. And she's only 65, it's not like she can't learn not to be so intolerant. The conversation veered off to me telling her that after such behavior, Gary and I were forced to separate the children from her life. She told me that even, and I quote, if they were like that, she still loved them. But I responded that those kind of thoughts were what caused us to pull away in the first place. She was seriously sad, and they were only grandchildren that she had left. She told me that my parents have at least 10 grandchildren, and that they were very lucky to have them around, and I told her that everything would have turned out differently if she had not been so intolerant. In the end, I left her house with no apology, but with a request. Leslie told me, with the biggest puppy dog face in the world, not to keep her only grandchildren out of her life. She would still love them, and from the bottom of my heart, from the deepest part of it, I wish that I could help her. But it's something that transcends, for not even the twins want her around, and I can't force anybody to be with somebody else. Only then I would become what I feared to be, a bad mother. Update number 5. Final update. Hello, or should I say ni hao? This is our trusted friend Ling texting you, straight from the other side of the world. That's right, we moved to China, my mainland, more specifically to the city of Nanjing, where my family was originally from. There's so much to tell you, but I think I'll just say the most relevant. Since the last update, it's been, I think, close to 9 months. I can't say for sure since we've been busy since then. I'll just say that we started a trip to visit relatives, and I've never seen in my life a crazy idea of my parents like this. We ended up getting attached to the place and decided to have an indefinite return visit. Let's see. Many factors made us come before you start making theories, but without a doubt, one of the most important ones in all these updates I've made has been the issue of Leslie and her relationship with the twins, who right now should be with my parents walking around the market. Let me explain, right? Well, it turns out that my parents have been planning this for about 5 years now, and have been saving the surprise until they collected enough money to be able to tell us to come. But they told us under one condition, that we not tell Leslie, because if not, she might have a heart attack knowing that her grandchildren and her child would be on the other side of the sea. And that's when a somewhat evil plan began. I say this because the trip went wonderfully. We saw, enjoyed, toured, and met many people, treating Gary as best we could. It's quite comical to see him interacting with those people since they don't usually see many Westerners on the street, trying to get the words right to ask for a melon in the market. It's almost adorable to watch. He does his best, and if there's one thing I'm thankful for, it's that I started teaching my children Mandarin at a very young age, so they would just keep that family legacy. Who knew that, in the end, it would be not only helpful to them, but their main way of communicating at this place. Now, they're teaching Gary. According to my parents, I reached the average level of communicating without problems, which was one of my main insecurities. Leslie, on the other hand, well, back to the point. The truth is that she was in a depressive state for quite a while until finally she started bombarding us with text messages and phone calls. But every time she did this, I was the one trying to answer her to make her understand that there was nothing we could do about it anymore. That's when we had to reveal the trip. There was a moment when she got a little rude and shouty, saying that I had kidnapped her son and that I had sullied her family, and that for me was the straw that broke that camel's back. I blocked her, but not before telling her that it would have been nice if her grandchildren had more time with their grandmother. Let me tell you this, to this day, I don't know how I could have been so savage. Never in my life have I felt so much satisfaction in planning some sort of revenge against another person. And that's not where the petty nastiness ends. But I was the one who proposed the trip of no return. That's right. We were doing so well that I say to Gary, "Hey, how about we stay here? We're doing good. There's more family, blah, blah, blah." Convincing him was easy, as he was already thrilled with the place. I won't say it was a peaceful transition. The kids understood that the language is more complicated than I could have taught them, and that you need it from everything here. Although English will always be a good ally for them, Gary says he misses his mother to some extent, but only because of who she is, because he won't miss the way she is. In the end, she brought her new self-imposed solitude to herself. For our part, we're waiting for one of my cousins who stayed in the United States to come here too, because we asked him to bring some of our things with him. That way, the move would be completed, and we would start making our life in the place I always heard about when I was little. I feel like it's even a small reward that life gave me, and I could not be more grateful for it. Since moving to the countryside, I can say that my relationship with my husband has improved. I'm going to tell you about both what my husband's family did to us in the past and what happened to us later on. Before moving to the countryside, we used to live close to my husband's family in the city, and we were constantly near his unmarried sister and mother. His mother and sister would frequently visit our house, and I used to cook for them. And since they constantly asked for money, we ended up giving them some. However, after a while, my husband and I began to argue about this because I was, uncomfortable with his mother and sister constantly taking advantage of us. My husband's someone who values his family, so he would always defend his mother and sister. He would explain that they were family and that we should help them with what they needed. But I'm sure that when we needed help, his mother and sister would not assist us. As it turned out, one day my husband's sister, Lois, managed to persuade my husband to do something for her. Even though I was against it, my husband agreed because it was Lois's request, and she ended up putting my husband into debt. Then she didn't even help him pay off the debt. I overheard Lois's talking behind my back to our neighbors, and she even came to me and accused me of things. Thanks to Lois, our neighbor stopped talking to me, and his mother constantly questioned the work I did at home and the meals I prepared, and she would even go as far as rummaging through our bedroom. Unable to tolerate this any longer, when I explained the situation to my husband, he said that he didn't want to talk to his family and that he wanted to put some distance between himself and them. He was very upset about the betrayal and regretted not listening to me. Because of these events, my husband and I decided to move to the countryside. Being away from his mother and sister for months had a positive impact on our relationship, and we were also slowly paying off the debt. I wasn't hoping to see his mother and sister again. It's been exactly 6 months, and since we decided to move and our peace and tranquility remained intact, one day my husband came home from work looking very tense, and I could tell that something bad happened. However, my husband expressed his desire to talk to me about his mother and sister. This was the last thing I wanted to hear. I didn't want them in our lives anymore, and his mother had called my husband, explaining that Lois needed treatment outside of the city due to some psychological issues, and asked if we could help. My husband said that her voice sounded very unpleasant, and she apologized for everything. From my husband's attitude, it was clear that he wanted to forgive them, but I could not bring myself to do it. They wouldn't even think of calling us if they didn't need something, especially not to offer an apology. My husband talked at length and with great sadness, trying to persuade me to allow them to come. I didn't want my husband to be so upset, so I eventually agreed to their visit. We had a large house and a good life in the countryside, however, the possibility of their arrival potentially disrupting this life scared me. Nonetheless, if my husband believes and trusts that his mother and sister are better people now, then I don't want to be prejudiced and hurt people. His mother and Lois came to our home, and so far everything seems fine. I have not witnessed any disrespectful behavior from them, and I hope it stays that way. My husband leaves for work early in the morning, and I work online, so I spend my day in the home office. In the evenings before my husband returns, I prepare dinner, and Lois is offered to help with cleaning, so she cleans the rooms one by one, and his mother assists me in the cooking. These changes are very new to me, and I'm having trouble adjusting. I wish I could say that my husband was right about their change, but my initial thoughts were accurate. Their true nature has revealed itself, and during the first month of their stay with us, they acted helpful, and then they stopped doing anything.
His mother criticized me daily because I worked from where I sat, and when my husband returned from work, everything seemed fine. Every night when I went to bed, it just felt like something was missing from my jewelry drawer, or that there was a shortage in the place where I kept my money. Even though I suspected Lois, I didn't want to be unfair or jump to conclusions. I didn't want to upset my husband again, but I felt that I needed to have the conversation with him. When my mother-in-law and Lois went shopping, I called my husband and talked to him, and told him to take a break from work. I explained to him what his mother and sister had been doing in his absence. However, my husband simply did not believe it. So I waited for the opportunity to talk to my mother-in-law, since my husband was angry with me. After about an hour, my mother-in-law and Lois came home. While Lois wandered around the house, I took my mother-in-law aside and told her that, their behavior was unacceptable and that if it continued, I would have to ask them to leave. My mother-in-law replied that my husband would not allow it and accused me of making empty threats before going to her room. I felt useless and powerless, so on my way to my room to calm down, I overheard my mother-in-law and Lois's conversation. Once I realized the topic of their convo, I started to record it. This time, my husband would have to believe me because I have proof. You see, my mother-in-law and Lois were planning to steal our savings, and my mother-in-law was explaining to Lois that gradually taking the money would be easier. I was shocked by what I heard, but the worst part was when my mother-in-law discussed how to access my husband's savings account. I felt so sorry for my husband at that moment, and I just wanted to go to my room and cry. When their conversation ended, I quietly went to my room crying, and I noticed that the drawer where I kept my jewelry was slightly ajar. I thought I might be mistaken about my money or jewelry being missing, but now I was sure due to both their conversations and what I saw. I had to tell my husband and get rid of them. In the evening, when my husband came home, I gathered everybody in the living room and played the recording of the conversation. I could not tolerate my mother-in-law and Lois staying at our house any longer. My husband was absolutely shocked by what he heard, and then he erupted in anger. He pulled me aside and immediately kicked his mother and sister out, not even allowing them to collect their crap. The next day, we went to court and filed a case, handing over the audio recording to the police, and Lois had taken out a loan for the house and could not steal from us, so she could not repay the loan. As a result, she lost the house and was left with debt, and both she and my mother-in-law were also slapped with a hefty fine by the court. I felt truly relieved because throughout my marriage they had constantly made me unhappy and just strained my relationship with my husband. Anyways, guys, what do you think about this situation? Top comment from the original post, comment number 1. I was saddened by the fact that your mother-in-law turned out to be such a person. Even if you tried to tolerate it, what she did was absolutely wrong, so I support you. It's incredibly audacious for her to just behave this way, trying to steal money from you even after you moved. I hope your mother-in-law and sister-in-law don't come across anyone else like this. I just hope that you're happier with your husband now. Comment number 2. You've strained your relationship with your husband's family, and instead of being more solution-oriented and constructive, you've acted quite vindictively towards your mother-in-law and sister-in-law. If they didn't have needs, they probably would not resort to theft. Have you considered that they might be too ashamed to ask for help? In my opinion, you're the one being selfish. Update number 1. I was genuinely surprised by the negativity in some of the comments regarding the accusations that people have drawn from what I wrote, which they believe to be true. I want to say the following: if my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had been in a difficult situation and simply asked for help, I, as a daughter-in-law, would have done my duty. However, they not only excluded me as the weak link in my city life, but also worked to damage my relationship with my husband. Despite what my mother-in-law and sister-in-law did to us, we opened our home to them when they asked for help while we were just living out there in the countryside. In the end, they had planned to rob us dry and take our savings. I don't matter as much, but they targeted my husband, who is one of their family members. There's no forgiving for what they did, which is why we decided to take legal action and punish them. I was deeply saddened as well, but it was a huge disappointment for my husband because he was betrayed by his own family. His trust in people has been shattered, and the peace in our home has been disrupted. Especially Lois, hiding her debts from my husband, putting him into debt, and then planning to steal his money is truly frightening in a time when even a family member is a threat to one's life and property. It's hard to know who to trust. My husband became introverted due to these events, and we hardly communicated, often ending up in arguments, and I was at a loss on how to make my husband feel better during this process. Every time my husband came home from work, he was tense and unhappy. When I tried to talk to him, he would either ignore me or respond with a short, dismissive sentence. I cooked his favorite meals every evening, but he wouldn't even look at it. He'd say that he ate outside and then go to sleep or watch a football match. It had become almost impossible to communicate with my husband, and I could not bear it any longer, so I picked a fight. I told him that he wasn't talking to me, ignoring me all the time, and if there's a problem, we need to discuss it as a married couple. However, it turned out that my husband's issue was not about being sad, but rather about my behavior towards my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. He claimed that it was me who instigated taking them to court and that he didn't want to. The reason for that, he said, was my pressure. I could not believe my ears when my husband accused me of being the one who convinced him to file the lawsuit against my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. He was now blaming me for his family's actions. I could not stay silent in the face of these accusations. Update number 2. Our arguments with my husband did not just last for a day. He starts constantly defending his family and blaming me for everything, even for the actions of his family. I thought maybe he could not accept what his family did. We had so much history together. I didn't want to push aside that history with a few fights, and I was very sad and unhappy, as if there was a heavy burden on me, unable to enjoy life. The strained relationship between us was affecting me terribly, and I played the voice recording for my husband again, and this time he said that we should sit down and talk things over. There was no need to go to court. I was starting to get tired of him not taking responsibility for what he did and still just blaming me. So, we had returned to a state where my husband and I hardly spoke, behaving as if we were alone in the house, and I only cooked for myself and took care of my own tasks most of the time. I even slept on the sofa in my office. My husband and I only spoke about household chores and responsibilities. The voice inside me was still urging me to do something to fix our relationship. We're a married couple. These rough patches are part of every marriage. With such thoughts, I was trying to stay positive. I wanted to save our marriage because I didn't want my husband to lose both his family and me. I thought it would be better for us to see a couples therapist, and when my husband came home from work, I told him that we could not continue like this, and that, as a married couple, we could resolve our issues. Initially resistant, he later agreed that going to couples therapy was necessary because he realized our relationship was in trouble. I don't know if this is the right thing to do. What do you guys think? After the conversation, I looked for a therapist. I found a female doctor, scheduled an appointment, and she gave me a date for a month later. During that month, I decided to cook for my husband, even though he didn't talk to me. When my husband came home, he started eating the meals that I prepared, even though he constantly complained about the food and criticized the organization of the house. I was trying to stay calm and understanding. I did not understand why he was trying to hurt me while I was trying to save our marriage. His constant behavior like this made me feel inadequate, despite my efforts to save our marriage. I'll update you guys soon. Update number 3. I mentioned that we went to a therapist, and when we went to the therapist, the doctor started asking us questions and had us fill out a few surveys. My husband consistently gave opposite and aggressive answers to the questions about me. When the doctor asked us to talk about significant events, I could not help but talk about how my husband's mother and sister had done so many terrible things to us. I told the doctor about the constant harassment and exploitation and how they turned the people in our neighborhood against us. Despite living close to each other in the city, I explained that after these incidents, our arguments about my husband's family began and that we moved to the countryside to end these disputes. However, even after moving, my husband's family continued to follow us, trying to steal from us and take our savings, leading us to take legal action. The doctor stated that my husband's family had caused significant harm to our marriage, and that therefore we needed to completely cut off communication with them. My husband came tense after hearing what I shared, and when the doctor spoke in a similar manner, he became very angry and starts to scream. He expressed his anger about how I spoke about his family, claiming it's disrespectful that every person, could make mistakes and so on. The doctor tried to calm my husband down, explaining that the purpose was not disrespect, but to talk about things that might be wrong and increase awareness. However, my husband did not listen, stormed out of the room and left, and the doctor continued the session with me, explaining that my husband's aggressive behavior was normal, due to his family being with him for years and the recent betrayal causing internal turmoil for him. She advised me to be patient and wait for my husband to clarify his feelings. I wanted our marriage to do well. After the session, I went home directly and calmly discussed what happened in therapy with my husband. However, he starts telling me that he had resumed talking to his mother, explaining that mother-in-law needed us and that his family could not pay off so much debt. His overly forgiving nature was damaging our marriage, but he seemed oblivious to it. From these conversations, I realized that my husband did not care about me at all. He always blamed me. Despite all my patience, he was talking about forgiving my mother-in-law and sister-in-law again, as if we had a significant budget to pay off their debt. I'm really tired of these selfish people. I think I'm making a mistake trying to save our marriage. Update number 4. Due to my husband's perverse and disrespectful behavior, I'd grown distant from him. I could not be as eager and compromising in the second therapy session, as I was in the first at least, and when my husband noticed my calmness, he strangely set aside his tension and started speaking to me in a more calm manner. The doctor, based on what my husband shared, addressed the injustices that he's done to me in this marriage. Although my husband initially responded angry, he apologized later, expressing remorse and a desire to make things right. Frankly, his sudden behavior just, didn't make me happy, as my efforts had seemed in vain for so long at this point. My enthusiasm was waning. I grew tired of our marriage, and especially with my husband being so dependent on his family. After my conversation with the doctor, she asked if I wanted to continue the marriage. I hesitated because my husband was overly dependent on his family, constantly trying to give a significant portion of our budget to them. I even mentioned that he suggested bringing my mother-in-law and sister-in-law to our home, saying that we could forgive them despite everything that they've done to us. In response, my husband became very angry, shouting at me aggressively, saying that I would not understand the situation because I didn't have a family. This statement was the last straw, and on top of everything, he threw my orphan status in my face, as if he hadn't hurt me enough. Although the doctor tried to explain that my husband's behavior was causing more harm to our marriage, I didn't want to endure this situation any longer. I could not allow somebody that I love to just constantly degrade me. Despite the doctor's gratitude, I left, and being home before my husband threw out all his belongings and called a locksmith to change the locks. Unable to enter the house, my husband starts to scream, apologizing and even crying in the front door. However, I could not tolerate his emotional manipulation any longer. I'd been enduring his family for years, and with his actions, my soul felt constricted. I think the doctor told my husband I would simply file for divorce, that I didn't want to see him again, and that he could happily live with his family without further interference from me, so I ended the conversation, and throughout the month, he constantly came to my door intoxicated, shouting and causing a scene in the neighborhood. His behavior frightened me, so I reported him to the police. After obtaining a restraining order and filing for divorce in the courts, the judge found my husband at fault and approved the divorce. A huge burden was lifted off my shoulders. Final update. Hey guys, I told you about my divorce from my husband, and yes, I divorced. I got a dog for my home since I didn't want any more relationships, and I also go to the gym every day now. I've built a beautiful, healthy life for myself with the money that I've earned, and I take better care of my skin, dress up, and it feels like I've just been reborn. Here's the real news for you. My ex-husband, because now I'm a single woman. Anyways, my ex-husband took on his sister's debt and then got sentenced to public punishment because he could not pay it back. When I heard this, I said, thank goodness we got divorced. Because if we had not, he probably would have used my efforts to cover his family's mistakes and debt. Since I don't have a family, I was constantly belittled by my ex-husband's mother as if I were an incomplete woman. But my ex-husband's family being in his life turned out to be his downfall. It's ridiculous to think that I needed a family to have a good life or be a good person. I'm good enough just the way I am. I don't know if I should feel sorry when I look back at my past and see my mistakes. But the real mistakes were not mine. It was my ex-husband and his family who made significant wrongs and ruined his life. While they suffer, I can enjoy and move forward happily in my own life. I hope you support and stand behind me in my divorce because I believe that women should support each other in these matters. By the way, my ex-husband's still trying to get back to me. Sending letters. Well, I guess he'll never learn. I'm not his mother. I'm not his sister. I will never forgive him. A bit of a backstory here. I'm a mother of 3, 34 years old, and my daughter Lily is from my first relationship. When I was young, I got pregnant quite early into a relationship with a not-so-great guy, and he left a couple months after I gave birth. She just turned 12, and he rarely saw her except to bring a gift every year or something. He's a useless father and has always been. After the divorce, I met my current husband. Lily was 3 before she was introduced to him. I've been with my husband Cormac for 8 years now. He's a sweetheart. He never minded that I had a kid, and he was great with her and me. Lily has my last name. My other children have his. When Cormac first introduced me and Lily to his mother, she began shrieking, and I mean shrieking, that I had a daughter. My husband and I were stunned, and Lily starts to cry, and everything sort of dissolved into chaos. Cormac did try to explain that it's totally normal for husbands to take in their wives' kids as theirs. Unless someone's the Queen of England, there's a chance at some point in the family tree somebody married a person with children. My mother-in-law, Dorothy, has been a pain in the butt about it since the first time we met. She always had an arsenal of snide comments and remarks about me not giving her a quote real grandchild, and how Cormac deserves somebody who could give him a real child. Cormac never stood for it, and she would not stop. As a result, I got pregnant, and now have Milo, who's 5, and Lyric, who's 7, with him. Although Dorothy has always been a good mother to Cormac, she's always treated me and Lily differently. I've never ever felt welcomed, never felt like I'm truly part of the family, and they ignore me at best and are mean to me at worst. And I feel childish saying it, but there's no other way to put it. They're just plain mean. How else can it be described when I was super excited to be pregnant again, and one day my mother-in-law turned to me at random and snottily said, "Women have babies every day. You're not doing anything special." Oh, but best believe she's obsessed with Lyric. The fact that this baby did not come from her loins is honestly the bane of her existence. She was constantly begging to watch him and take him places. I'm talking every single day. But Dorothy holds Lily at arm's length and does not treat her like a member of her family. She doesn't include her like she does extended family. Despite being there since she was a toddler, she does not consider Lily, quote, her son, and corrects people when they refer to her as her granddaughter. She says that Lily has her own dad, and yes, she does, but was hardly around when she was born and then left. It hurts Lily when her grandmother says it isn't Cormac's. Both my mother-in-law and father-in-law live out of state and have taken absolutely no interest in my daughter's life. They haven't even seen her for 3 years. During the past years, my husband and I have tried to get them to FaceTime my daughter, but to no avail. So, father-in-law starts calling her once a week or so, but It took so many attempts to even get to that point.
My in-laws are both retired, so the lack of effort is certainly not due to the lack of time. They're also financially well off and have taken many trips in the last few years, just none to see us. When there's a family dinner at a restaurant we're not invited or whatnot, and when my mother-in-law and father-in-law were over for one dinner at our house, I had just brought dessert out when Dorothy gave a cookie box to Lily and said, "Share this with your dad." So, Ashley brought it to Cormac. Mother-in-law then corrected her and said, "That's your mom's husband, not your dad. The one who made your mom pregnant is your mom." She also gave my sons a chocolate box with similar instructions. The kids were so confused. My husband told her she was being disrespectful, and father-in-law excused himself that they both left early so the argument did not escalate, but after thinking about it, I was worried what kind of things mother-in-law might tell the kids in private. Especially Lily, who has always known she is not Cormac's bio daughter. Last Christmas, my girl did not receive anything from her, while other kids in the family got gift cards and cards. Also, all the kids in the family get a trip once a month, but my girl never gets to participate. Mother-in-law excuse was this: "I forgot." Also, I'm literally ignored at every family gathering, which is about a monthly affair, at least, if not bi-weekly. I attempt to make conversation and get curled 1 or 2 word responses until they turn and find a family member to converse with. The other day, she was doing a family photo album and was gathering family pictures from everyone. Sister-in-law and her kids, brother-in-law and his kids, and so on. She called and asked if I could send her some pictures. I thought that was nice of her. I sent them pretty much after my call ended with her, and we were all invited to her house. The entire family was there to look at the photo album because it was finally complete. We took turns to look at it, and when it was my and my children's turn, I was stunned. Turned out she picked the pictures that had just me, Cormac, and my sons, not Lily. Although we took a ton of pictures. We were excitedly wanting to see the album, then asked why the pictures weren't there. I didn't even want to think about how Lily would feel. I was caught off guard, otherwise I would not have looked at them at all. I asked Dorothy, why did she exclude my girl? And she didn't even reply, she just straight up ignored me. I felt awful, so I got up, took my children, and walked out immediately, and Cormac followed. Mother-in-law called and was upset, saying me walking out like that was extremely disrespectful to the entire family. When I told her about what she did, she blatantly said, "I don't want to lie to people. That girl does not relate to me in any way." She said she treats her well and will host her birthdays if I want, but she will not call her family. This is when I told her I don't like how she does this, how she treats our daughter like she's not there, like she's not part of the family. I told her we never ever asked her to consider her the same, but she excludes her and keeps her out. I told her I'm her mom and I love her. She got mad and told me I chose to birth her, and she did not choose to have Lily in her life. She also said it was not her business what my relationship is like with Lily. So, I told her today was a symbol of family. Lily felt left out when all the kids' pictures were there except for hers, although I sent her pictures of all of us as a family, and I argued a lot with her over this, and I hung up on her since she did not think that she did anything wrong. I hate to say this, but I think one thing that may factor into it is her different appearance and race/culture. You see, Lily looks just like any other white child, but she has a full head of black hair and brown eyes because my ex was Asian. My husband and I thinks that she's absolutely gorgeous. Another factor is that our sons are also beautiful and are regularly complimented by complete strangers. We've even been approached by modeling agencies after posting their photos on Instagram. Lily is overweight like her father, and she does not look like a model.
She's still beautiful inside and out to me and Cormac, but we know this is a very big insecurity of hers, and she feels inadequate compared to them, despite many times trying to make her feel beautiful and shield her. My father-in-law's Facebook cover is a photo family, without Lily and me, and her frequently posted pics of our 2 sons, but rarely includes her. He buys them gifts, then he buys Lily. He frequently compliments them, but rarely Lily. He was better about it when she was younger, but now the different treatment is so obvious. His family hates the fact that Cormac is, quote, raising another man's child, and they don't like that Lily is coming over every time. Even if invited, Lily now refuses to see her family and knows they don't like her. To be honest, they don't like me much either. But they absolutely adore Milo and Lyric. Probably due to all this, she has bullied Milo and Lyric sometimes. She's a great girl and she's usually kind, but she frequently picks on them and has fought with them, especially now that she's starting to go through puberty and the mood swings are coming. Lyric has also started being nasty back to Lily and calls her fat and ugly. He includes Milo in this too. They do this thing where they stuff pillows up their jumpers and pretend to be Lily. I do my best to stop this behavior from both sides, but it's hard, especially because her school friends seem to think, well, taking Milo and Lyric's side no matter what happens and makes Lily out to be the instigator. She's told me that sometimes she wants to run away from home. My heart just breaks for this whole situation, and I feel like it's too late now to fix their relationship. I have numerous examples, but it would make the post miles long. People aren't broodmares and stallions. You don't tolerate them and then outright dislike their other kids, etc. If any of my kids marry somebody with kids themselves when they grow up, those aren't my bio grandkids, those are now my grandkids too. Well, that means they'll have a bonus grandparent. I will go by Ma, as the mountain woman of the family have done for ages. Now the main problem is Cormac's sister-in-law. Sister and Mom have been telling him for months about this event that they're planning at my father-in-law's house the day after Thanksgiving. Some context here. We live in the city, but every Maundy Thursday to Easter, we visit my father-in-law's province that's like 6 hours drive for a religious tradition. I know this might sound weird to a non-religious person, but every year, people there hold a ton of events, like reenactments of the Stations of the Cross through an actual mountain, self-flagellation, and a lot of other stuff. My husband's grandfather is one of the, quote, apostles in these affairs. That entails being one of the primary people in charge of events and portraying one of the 12 apostles in the reenactment. However, he is too old and can barely talk or walk anymore. So, my mother-in-law is the self-proclaimed gatekeeper of the tradition. Cormac's family is really highly respected in the entire town. This was something I witnessed constantly because everywhere we go, people always greeted us and often give us free stuff. I never realized how deeply rooted my husband's family's traditions were until I married into it. They're a religious bunch, steeped in rituals and customs that had supposedly been passed down through generations. But my mother-in-law's just awful. She constantly bothers us about going to church. My husband is only slightly religious, but he does not participate in organized religion, and, well, I'm an atheist, with atheist parents. My immediate family does not ever talk about religion or rituals unless we're complaining about it. It's horrible going to her home. When she isn't spouting her religious bullcrap, she's ruthlessly guilt-tripping my husband about everything. How I treat him, the fact that we don't go to church, the fact that we did not get married in church. She doesn't even see us as married in God's eyes. We'd finally agreed to get our marriage blessed by a priest, but that still wasn't enough. She treats me like the Antichrist, and this is all coming from a woman who believes that in God's eyes, she's still married, so to this day, she's been divorced for almost 20 years now. The problem is not that she is religious. No. The problem is that she is tactless, pushy, rude. If it wasn't religion, it'd be something else. She uses rituals and customs for control, just like a bully wants to control their victim. Okay, let's fast forward to now. We were like, okay, yeah, sure, we'll be there. The problem now is that we're taking Lily to the event. We thought it'd be a good chance for her to meet the extended family and feel welcomed and included, but a few days back, Dorothy called to tell us that they all decided that Lily could not be a part of it because it's supposed to show the grandparents with their lineage. She insisted that it was exclusively for true descendants. I almost did not even feel like going to their house at all because of this. I did not want Lily to feel excluded. Honestly, I don't even know what I was thinking, because I myself have never felt included in their family, so why would they treat Lily any better? Cormac made a couple of calls to his relatives, and guess what? They were all fine with Lily joining them, and they think she's family too. Now, I don't know how accurate this is, but during the Thanksgiving event, I heard somebody talking about how the next day's ritual was not performed before. And Cormac does not remember any tradition like this too. Contrary to Dorothy's claims, the tradition is not ancient at all. In fact, it was an invention of her. So, instead of confronting Dorothy immediately, I decided to bide my time until the next family reunion. The day came, and Dorothy, true to form, once again tried to exclude Lily from participating in the tradition. It was at that moment that I finally did it. I mustered up the courage to step forward and share the truth with everybody present. All of the extended family, and even some community members, I loudly replied to her, "Why can't our Lily step inside?" Well, she took great offense to this and told me that her family has been doing this tradition for years before I just came into the family, and Lily was not going to be the one who tries to stop it. But before people started correcting her like, quote, "I think we don't perform this kind of ritual, Dorothy. Yeah, I think you meant something else and not particularly this one." The room was eerily silent, and more family members looked like they had their own doubts and suspicions about her actions over the years. Cormac asked her if she actually invented this tradition herself. Here's where things absolutely went off the rails. It quickly became clear that the truth about the tradition was just the tip of the iceberg. We soon found out that my mother-in-law had been using her position as the gatekeeper of family customs to manipulate the family affairs. She had manipulated the tradition, and it was a ruse designed to secure her and her husband's inheritance rights of the estate that they owned solely for her biological grandchildren, effectively excluding Lily, who did not share her bloodline. She kept a handsome amount to share to each child except Lily. We knew that she had the estate put away for all her grandbabies, but did not know until now that our daughter was excluded. The will is not out of date, and it was not an oversight. The will explicitly refers to our daughter by name, and states that she will receive nothing. Dorothy is in excellent mental health and was practicing surgeon till last year, so it's not as if she's old and senile and did not know what she was doing. The land is not a problem, as my husband and I are fortunate enough to be doing well financially. The problem is the exclusion itself. If our daughter learns this, I know it'll crush her. She's dealt with a lot of hurtful commentary and assumptions, and we have spent so much time reassuring her that she is as much our child as Milo and Lyric, etc. I feel so angry at my mother-in-law for this, and I know that Lily will be so hurt to know that her grandma treated her differently in her estate's will too. Well, we then told Dorothy that we are prepared to get a lawyer involved if she did not do the right thing, but she said she was not in the right space to even talk to us right now. But for weeks, she would not do or say anything. We've gotten a lawyer hired and filed a police report on the situation. My father even left his business trip several days early just to help us with everything.
Several of Cormac's family members offered our support too. So, this went on for months, and the fight was not just about exposing Dorothy's lies and seeking justice. It opened up a whole can of worms that nobody expected. Emotions, alliances formed, disputes within the family, you name it. What started as a need for justice and fairness now became a whirlwind of consequences and shattered relationships as well. Dorothy now hates me for calling her out on her BS. Example, bringing it to everybody's attention that she's a child hater and a sham. Update number 1. Hey guys, I'm just super overwhelmed by everyone and their support and responses, so just thank you before I continue. I wanted to tell you that we have changed Lily's last name to her father's. It's Lily's award ceremony in her school this week, so the same night we had the courier pick up the invitation card to send to Dorothy. In the envelope, we put the name Lily Walsh, which, by the way, is her dad's last name. We knew she would not come, but it felt so good to send her that envelope. We've also been taking her to group therapies, and it's also just really helped the self-esteem of her. And our lawyer spoke to us a couple days ago. He says that the will is specific and precise and not general or ambiguous. And when it comes to wills, ambiguity is what makes a case. He says that there are some ways to challenge a will written like this, but generally, only if they exclude children, not grandchildren, or other further relatives. So, we had lunch with Dorothy and told them that we will drop the case, and her reply was, well, yeah, you have to. And then she left. We decided to turn her dogma narrative inside out. If she makes a comment, we turn her critiques into something more traditional. We made it about how we raised the family members who were respectful to children, no matter where they come from. God's kingdom belongs to children, and we should not embitter them. And I miss the old days when everyone had some heart. We weren't fake about it. When we were around them, we made it seem like it was coming from a conservative standpoint rather than a progressive one. I promised that she had no clue what to do from the look on her face. She was shocked. We put on the sweetest fox southern hospitality that we could. And oh boy, it made her mad like no end. I was like, hey, how's she going to complain about Lily now without sounding psycho? She'll have to say things like, wow, my daughter-in-law is a total jerk. She made Lily's friends with my entire family after I banned her from our family traditions. Now we're nothing but sweet and kind and amiable when she's around, to make her unable to see why she hates us and make her absolutely livid about it. This way, she actually looks more insane. Sometimes we would even make some small bets, just let it go around about what subject she will bring up the most. Just doing this turns into a game for us both, which automatically makes Dorothy seem more like a joke. We were able to turn her rude, tactless demeanor into nothing but a joke, and the woman is losing all of her power over her son. Update number 2. So, Dorothy's no longer the gatekeeper of the traditions. It seems there was a huge conversation among the elder relatives, and they decided to stop letting her make decisions on the family matters. On one hand, we want to protect her from the pain, so we are seriously considering creating a trust with her, containing the same amount of money as the other kids will receive, and pretending she inherited it from her grandmother. Since the other family members are also shocked by my grandmother's will, I wonder if they too can make a small token contribution, perhaps out of the money left to them by Grandma if they received it, to the trust in order to show the entire family wanted to contribute to rectify Grandma's mistake. Even if each family member just contributed $20, being able to say that the entire family pulled together to make sure that the adopted son knows he is a real member of the family is really important. Obviously, asking for money from family members is a delicate thing, and the way that it is approached should be carefully planned, but
Some way of showing that all the aunts and uncles and cousins are on Lily's team will be a really important way of overcoming the pain of knowing what Grandma hated her. So, we know that my husband's siblings would go along with that plan, as they are just as shocked as we are. We could explain it as, Grandma may have left you out, but the rest of your family did not feel the same way, and gave up some of what they are giving so that you can have what have shown to be left for you. Takes the sting out of her grandma being such a jerk, huh? And drives home what the rest of the family thought was wrong. But on the other hand, if she ever looked into information about her, she could potentially find her will and she would learn the truth. More than anything, we know that we would be lying to her about something as fragile as the love of a family member. Even if she would not go looking for the will specifically, her grandma was well known for historic medical spiritual reasons, and I could see her looking to find more about her. I know it's probably just paranoia on my part. I just can't imagine how she would feel if, well, he knew she excluded her and we all lied to her about it. I would hope in the long run she would realize we did it out of love, but that might take some time. Thank you guys so much for all the support with the situation, and I hope to update you guys in the future. Oh yeah, and to the person saying we're gaslighting my mother-in-law, no. She's more than welcome to have a bigger part in our lives, and as soon as we can make it though. One freaking lunch without some kind of attitude from her. Update number 3. Thank you guys for all your kind advice. I will read everything, but likely would not respond, so I just want to give you a small update. I was cooking in the kitchen, and all of a sudden I hear a loud bang, preceded by crying Lily. When I rushed into the hall, I see Lyric towering over her. "You're not real, all of this is mine." She starts screaming, which was incredibly confusing to say the least. After calming them down, I asked Lyric what he meant. He then revealed that Grandma Dorothy had told him that he was, quote, Mommy and Daddy's real child. This made me so mad. I asked him what else Grandma had told him, and he told me all about how she had been telling him that Lily was not really his sister, and how he should have an extra attention for being extra special. How he's always going to be Grandma's favorite grandson, and so much more. She even told our daughter that her step-grandparents will never really love her because she isn't actually theirs. My husband's going to talk to her tomorrow since he cannot say much with the kids in the room, but I think this time, mother-in-law has crossed a major boundary line and should not be allowed to spend time with them unmonitored anymore. Update number 4. Hey guys, guess what? Cormac blocked Dorothy on everything after sending her a text, detailing her actions and how this was absolutely unacceptable, and how she'd never be seeing her grandkids until they were much older and understood the situation, so they would not be swayed by her words. He also added this. Mother, if I hear one word or see one action regarding real grandchildren or anything that's not 1,000% supportive, it all ends immediately and permanently. You can think of it all you want, I don't care, but one slip to Lily and you're done. And I mean it, just one. I will move continents to remove you from their lives. Don't you test me. Well, then she called my husband right away and cried, and he told her, I love you, Ma, but if you will not respect us, we will be spending very little time with you in the future. Why would I ever want to spend time with anyone who disrespects me, my wife, and my daughter? It's not a religious thing, it's a respect thing. In the hopes that she might realize her doings and come out to meet Lily and us, Cormac sent her a long handwritten text and email, but she has refused to acknowledge any of those attempts. The only time that she responded was she sent an email in all capital letters, right back to him warning him that if he attempts to contact her in any way, she will disown him. Well, This has really saddened my husband and has made me very angry with the way that she's treating him. We recently met at a baby shower, and when she expressed her concern about her son turning like this, Cormac reminded her that one of the 10 Commandments was to, quote, love thy neighbor as thyself. In practical application, meaning to be good to all, and the First Amendment right guarantees us all the freedom to decide for ourselves. And last, that it's a general rule of thumb to, quote, not discuss religion or politics in good company. The last comment hopefully served as a compliment, as in referring to Dorothy as good company. But she could not agree to treat me and Lily with respect. Well then, she blew up at us, calling us unforgiving people who were holding a grudge to punish her. Sister-in-law sides with her, saying that we should not be denying her grandsons because we can't let go of the past. She does not understand that we are not punishing her by keeping the kids away but protecting them. My husband replied, would you be the one willing to re-slice the pie to include my daughter? She muttered to sister-in-law and left, and that night, she called my husband and told him the will is now changed. Lily's included along with the other kids and asked to check with the lawyer further. We rejected her heartless statement and we told her we don't want a single penny from such a hate-filled person, and had asked Dorothy not to visit our sons anymore as it will affect our daughter. Even before my husband spoke to Dorothy, we'd already talked to a lawyer who deals with money, and he said that he can set it up so that we can deposit the amount the trusts are worth now, and it'll accrue additional money at the same rate so our daughter will never know the difference. We are financially able to set up a trust with the relatives' money, and Lily's the oldest child, and none of the other kids know about the money yet, and probably won't ever for a while. It's just a matter of morality. I know my husband's siblings won't tell their kids the truth, and I won't divulge it to themselves. Also, one of my close friends shared with me that she used to regularly read research and articles mentioning her parents and their accomplishments, but it never occurred to her to read the will or even look. There were also substantial funds left in a scholarship that she never even wondered about how much until I called her. She said she knew the money they left for philanthropy probably far exceeds her inheritance, but did not bother her in the slightest. Nor does she have any interest in trying to figure it out. She doubts this is something Lily will ever even look at. Me and Cormac agree with her. We want Lily to be happy, and if hiding the truth makes her happy, so be it.